Okay, can I call the meeting to order, please? It's 6:04. So we're going, I gotta get on my kid here. We gotta start off tonight with a land acknowledgement, which I'm going to read. The land on which the city of St. John, or Mennequist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatawamilkati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause for a few moments and reflect. Okay, so this evening, we have a special guest here. We have Quinn Cameron, and she's going to perform the national anthem for us, and the city clerk is going to give you a little bit of her background.
My mic would help. We'd like to thank Quinn and her family for coming tonight, and Quinn is a grade 6 student at Divine Mercy Catholic School, and she enjoys anything creative and the theater.
Oh, anything creative in theater. All right, Quinn, you're up to the mic, and I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the national anthem, please.
Do I sing? Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all my sense command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, our true, our strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Quinn. When you got up there, a little tiny thing, I thought, she'll have a little teensy voice, but you don't. Very impressive. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for bringing her over. Appreciate it. Thanks. City Clerk, over to you for the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. Next on the agenda is item 2.1, approval of minutes of November the 27th.
Minutes from November 27th. Councillor Hickey and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is approval of the agenda. We do have two items that came from Committee of the Whole. The first one would be 17.1, Retail Drive Realignment, and then 17.2, St. John Local Immigration Partnership Transfer. And I understand there's a request to add an item to the agenda.
Deputy?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to add an item subject letter to Minister Austin with regards to AIM, please.
Okay, in support of his letter to the,
It's in support of his action.
okay, all right. So we'd add that one then. And so I would ask for approval of the agenda with the added items on the question. Oh, wait, now, I need a motion to approve the agenda. It's moved and seconded. Councillor, the deputy and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just declaring a conflict on 17.1, please.
17-1. Okay. All right, not seeing any other conflicts. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Over to you, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.8 conclusive, please.
Okay, and I've got a seconder, I've got Counselor Stewart for a seconder. On the question, I have Counselor Lowe.
Yeah, I like to ask questions on 5.5 and 5.8 combined. Same
5.5.
questions pretty
Okay.
well relate to
5.5 and
both.
5.8, that's Mr. Baker. Over to you, Mr. Baker. Or I should say over to you, Counselor, for the question.
So 5.5 is Garden Street from City Road to Colbert Street, which is one of the main drags to go uptown. And 5.8 is a $6-7 million project, both by the same company, and nothing to do with the company. Are they both being done at the same time? Is the first question I got.
Through your worship to the councillor, yes, they are being done at the same time. What we'll basically have is, basically once it's awarded, we'll meet with the contractor and they'll provide us with the schedule. But I do expect that the contractor would want to start on 1 mile rather quickly. One thing to consider with that project is there is civil work at the start, but there also is mechanical, electrical, structural that would be done by other parties, subs of the main contractor.
Okay, I'll jump back to Garden Street. Like, Garden Street runs from City Road to the top of the hill, Colbert Street. So will that all be dug up at the same time? Because you could come across the bridge and hit the top of Garden Street if it wasn't dug up, because you're going to back the traffic out the highway up to the...
Yeah, the expectation would be that they would probably start at the bottom and they would work their way up. And then they would also limit the amount of traffic disruption that they would have. We are trying to allow one way of traffic on the bottom section. On the top section, it's too narrow and we'd have to close it. So it'd be one way of traffic going from City Road going up the hill. And then we will be putting out to the public that they should try and use alternate routes like Crown Street in order to basically get around the construction.
Well, and if we're going to think that we're going to rely on Dorchester got a stop street at the top, which causes problems. So have you got a time limit, any kind of a time limit on the Garden Street operation?
So the time limit in the contract is 20 weeks that they have construction, that they have the site for, and it can be no later than October 31st.
And there's penalties if you go over time.
So there's liquidated damages if they go over the October 31st. So if they start earlier in like May 1st, it's only 20 weeks that they would have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Counselor Hickey's up next for a question. Or Counselor Ogden, I guess they've gone to, did you go to Counselor Ogden? Is your light on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Counselor.
Mr. Baker, the connection between Garden Street and our 5 vulnerable neighborhoods is extremely important. The rusted old Stanley Street pedway that the province will not fix for us, we've asked since 2007, and which I would hope that the city would try to make that a priority, because those are walking communities. Our priority neighborhoods are walking communities. We've got to have better access across Garden Street, which can be a raceway. We've got to make it look better. It's an entrance into our city. And I've asked for years to have beautification along that street and for the Stanley Street pedway to be fixed up, which it just seems that the province is not taking us serious here of our 5 vulnerable neighborhoods. And that there has to be a walkway across Garden Street that is safe. And there's a lot of people on Wright Street, Winter Street, Spring Street that work at St. Joseph's, that work uptown. I spent 4 years at St. Joe's every night with my mom, and everybody told me the pedway is not well lit, Garden Street's not well lit, the traffic goes too fast, And City Road doesn't look like it once did. And that's partly the fault of tearing down the general hospital and everything.
Counselor, can I just interrupt you there? Only because like this is about the Terra X contract we're talking about.
I know,
for
but
the
if we're
road.
going to be talking about Garden Street, I want you to remember how much foot traffic is going across there for people who do not have the money to buy cars. Because here we're talking about cars, and we're talking about et cetera, but we're not talking about the connection between the 5 vulnerable neighborhoods, which that Pedway and Garden Street is. And I think we forget that. We've got to take care of the center of our city, not just getting people out of the city or into the city. So would you please take care of Garden Street and the Stanley Street Pedway? It gets sloughed off and it's not important, but it is important to the people who live there, and it has to be safe.
Thank you,
And,
Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Hickey, do you have a question that's going to impact your vote?
I
Just
do
curious.
have a question, yes. I was just wondering, specific to item 5.5 and 5.7, Mike, perhaps for you again, I don't mean to keep you up here. There's references to pedestrianization in both of them and enhancements to them. Do you know if that's something we'll see renderings of prior to it happening, or what's the process for those specific decisions around?
So in terms of renderings, we don't typically do renderings on that. What we will be doing is public consultation on Pitt Street,
Okay.
where people will be able to see the drawings.
Yeah.
But if you actually consider Pitt Street, it's going to look very similar to the Pitt Street that we did this year. We did Pitt and Britain this year. We actually reconstructed
Right.
that. We're just doing the next
Yeah.
phase of that, so it
Yeah.
should look.
That was my guess, and I guess just, is there significant changes planned for Garden Street from that?
There isn't significant changes in terms, I think there's we're trying to make wider sidewalks. One thing that we had to work around was the traffic poles, and we're actually going to be doing new traffic lights as well with actual more accessibility on it. So it'll be a big improvement compared to what's there now.
Okay, thanks very much. The threshold is low on traffic poles between Fredericton and Moncton. I guess the threshold is just don't put them in the middle of the street.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So we've got the motion on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is members' comments.
Members' comments. Councillor Sullivan, over to you. I'm going to ask everyone to please watch your mics. It says 3 minutes. You've got 2. Go ahead, Councillor.
That was 4 seconds of my time, Your Worship. First of all, just from me and my family to everybody, happy holidays, everybody who celebrates in your own faith this time of year. As schools have a couple of weeks and then have a couple of weeks off, have a restful, safe New Year. Some thank yous. So the Canada Games Aquatic Center last Friday hosted the provincial NBIAA swim meet, and I know several counselors around the table have connections to St. John High School. So I'll give a shout out to the team from St. John High School won the provincial banner on Friday and are the repeat provincial champions. So way to go, Greyhounds. Congratulations to you and your head coach, Charlie Sullivan. Some thanks to Charlie and Andrew Clark, who is a teacher at Harborview High School, but the two of them, on top of everything else they do and coaching their own high school teams, also hosted and did all the legwork to host all the other, I think, like 26 schools from around the province. And finally, a shout out to Ben Tremblay and the team from the Canada Games Aquatic Center itself. St. John High School's pool has been out of commission since April, so Ben's been very good at coordinating with the high schools to host practices this fall. And on top of the work he did with the Aquatic Center, he also volunteered to help coach the St. Malachy's team. So lots of time and giving, and just congratulations to all the athletes who took part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor. You managed to get that in there. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to make sure everyone has it on their calendar. Tomorrow, December 12th at 6:30, Trinity Church is hosting their start of their campaign launch for their bell restoration project, so that we can once again hear the bells chime throughout St. John. Also, where it's our last meeting ahead of the holiday break, wanted to offer a big Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Happy Hanukkah to those celebrating between November 20th and like January 24th. There's like 14 different religious celebrations throughout that time. So to anyone celebrating, all the best and happy holidays.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I just want to say a big thank you to our Jewish community. We were all invited over for Hanukkah on Saturday, and they were so hospitable, just pushing food at us and everything. It was just lovely to see everybody. And I wanted to recognize the pro-Palestinian supporters for going out in the rally today in the rain. And it was very bad conditions, but it's a global day to try to get peace in the Middle East, which I think everybody wants. I also just wanted to mention that it is unacceptable for anybody to discriminate against anyone in the community. So whether it be anti-Semitic or being Islamophobic, it's not acceptable. And of course, I do want to say happy holidays because so many people are celebrating, and I hope everyone gets the time to spend time with family and friends. It's a really important time to try to not put pressure on yourself, but to get to enjoy each other's company. So happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. I will quickly mention that I'd gotten a note this week that the former Speaker of the Senate, Noel Kinsella, has died. He was chair of the New Brunswick Human Rights Commission for 22 years and was named to the Senate by Brian Mulroney in 1990. He was appointed Speaker by Stephen Harper in 2006. So condolences go out to his family. And also on the happy holiday theme, I say come to the breakfast at the market. The mayor's breakfast is Friday. We're going to be there at 5:45. We'll start up at 6 o'clock. And all of the funds that we raise and all of the vendors there will be donating food so that we can put the breakfast together. And everything that's sold will go towards Harbor Lights, which supplies 16 food banks across southern New Brunswick with the funds that they need to carry them through the winter. So I encourage everyone to come. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to piggyback on that. You forgot to mention you have a toy box there, a donation box right at
that's
the
right.
market. So if anybody's able to bring along a small gift for a child, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's the time's 6:22 right now, and we have to start public hearings at 6:30. I would recommend we move on to approval of bylaws under
Okay.
the 10s, just to deal with a few items that we can get through relatively quickly. So the first, as long as there's no objection, would be 10.1, and this is for the Business Improvement Levy Bylaw Amendment for third reading. And as council will recall, this item has been to council already for approval of the budget at the last meeting. And now we're looking for third reading of this item to approve the levy rate of 16 cents per $100 of assessed value of non-residential property in the BIA area. And council can now proceed, if it wishes, to move ahead with third reading by entirety.
So we need approval reading by entirety. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And this is titled a law to amend bylaw number BIA 2, Business Improvement Levy Bylaw. Be it enacted by a Common Council of the City of St. John as follows. The Business Improvement Levy Bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 3rd day of January 2006, is amended by repealing Section 2 thereof and inserting the following. A levy of 16 cents for each $100 of assessed value is hereby imposed for 2024 upon non-residential property within the business improvement area established by the BIA Business Improvement Area Bylaw enacted on the 5th day of January 2004. And now another resolution to approve third reading by title.
Third reading by title. The deputy and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend bylaw number BIA 2, Business Improvement Levy Bylaw.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
And next under the bylaws would be 10.2, and this is a bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting water and sewerage.
Okay, I'm sending this one over to Mr. Fogan for the intro. Do you have
Thank
an
you,
intro for
Worship.
it?
Yeah, just quickly to the council, if council will recall, on November 27th, council adopted the 2024 utility operating fund, and that night approved the first and second reading of the utility bylaw, the amendments there too. This would be the third reading of that bylaw.
Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, motions?
Just two motions required, third reading in entirety. We did say summary, but it's a short bylaw, and
Entirety.
third reading by title.
Okay, third reading in entirety. Counselor Lowe and Counselor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
It's titled "A Law to Amend a Bylaw Respecting Water and Sewerage, be it enacted by Common Council of the City of St. John as follows. A bylaw of the City of St. John entitled Bylaw Respecting Water and Sewerage, enacted on the 7th day of June 2004, is hereby amended by Schedule 1. Schedule E is repealed and replaced with Schedule E as submitted."
Okay, I need approval for third reading by title. Counselor Radwan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend a bylaw respecting water and sewerage.
All right, next item, City Clerk.
And next is item 10.3, proposed municipal plan amendment at 1440 Loch Lomond Road.
Okay, for this one, I'm sending this over to Acting Commissioner Poffenroff for a little intro.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening is an application for a municipal plan amendment for a property located at 1440 Loch Lomond Road. The application, which was submitted by Eric DeJong of Slopeside Holdings Limited, seeks to redesignate on Schedule A of the Municipal Development Plan land having an approximate area of 3.68 hectares located at 1440 Loch Lomond Road, also identified as PID number 55094981, from urban reserve to stable area, and is before you for a decision to move forward in the process to refer it to the Planning Advisory Committee and schedule the required public hearing for February 5th, 2024. Council can also opt not to move forward with the process and deny the application at this stage. It is staff's recommendation that council proceed to the next stage in the process, which will provide opportunity for full consideration of the application, including a technical review by staff, review by the Planning Advisory Committee, and further opportunities for public input at both the Planning Advisory Committee and council public hearing. With that, Your Worship, I'll turn it over to you for the required motion.
Okay, so I'd take a motion to approve the public hearing date and advertising. Deputy and Counselor Radwan, and I was going to say, got a question? No. Okay. All right, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Right, next item, City Clerk. Do we have time for anything? Yep.
Yes, I would recommend we deal with the resolutions that came from Committee of the Whole. They should only
Okay.
take a moment.
All
And
right.
so the first one would be,
Counselor Radwan's going to leave
oh.
because she's got to declare a conflict
that's
with it.
correct,
Okay.
yep. So the first one is with respect to Retail Drive. It's item 17.1 on the agenda. And the resolution would be that the city enter into a revised amended and restated land acquisition agreement with Clearview Homes Limited in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its December 11th, 2023 meeting for the purpose of exchanging lands, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said revised, amended, and restated agreement and any documents ancillary thereto where necessary to give effect to the transaction.
Okay, I'll take a motion. The deputy and Counselor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item, City Clerk. Do we have time for another item?
Maybe we can just give a moment for Councillor Radwan to
Counselor
return.
Radwan, come on in.
And the second item from Committee of the Whole was with respect to St. John Local Immigration Partnership Transfer 2024 call for proposals. And the resolution is that council authorize the mayor to write a letter on behalf of the city of St. John to Envision St. John in support of their application to become the new contract agreement holder for the St. John Local Immigration Partnership between April 2025 and March 2030, and that the city works with Envision St. John and SJLIP to support this application and ensure that the city's interests on immigration and the delivery of the St. John immigration strategy continue to be maintained.
Okay, I'll take a motion. I'll take a mover on that, please. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, City Clerk, you've got the 3 opposed.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, it looks like it's 6:30 for us.
That's correct. So it's now 6:30, and that was the advertised time for our public hearings. And so the first item for the public hearings is item 9.1 on your agenda. And this is with respect to a Section 59 amendment. It has a Planning Advisory Committee report and staff presentation for the property at 1250 Fairvale Boulevard.
Okay, I'm passing this over to Acting Commissioner Poffenroff for the intro.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening for a public hearing is an application for a Section 59 amendment that was submitted by 627036NB Ltd. for the property located at 1250 Fairville Boulevard. The application is seeking to rescind existing Section 59 conditions to enable the property to be used for a self-storage facility. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is the recommendations to rescind the existing Section 59 conditions. I'll now turn it over to Yeva Matson, the planner on the file for the staff presentation.
Eva, over to you.
Thank you. So this applicant would like to amend former Section 39 conditions that restricted the use of the site to a specific plan that was proposed in 1978. This has been a common practice to create these Section 59 conditions that tie a specific development proposal and that associated site plan to a successful rezoning process, which is what occurred. This may look familiar as a similar case came before you in, I believe, October, and it was for the other portion of land that this was a part of at one time. So the applicant is proposing a facility with storage being accessed along the exterior of the building. It's a self-storage business with many of the units being movable. This would also include new landscaping and fencing. The development is located on Fairville Boulevard, directly across from the off-ramp for Highway 1. Though there is residential behind it, the elevation difference and existing green space creates a large physical and visual buffer. The proposed site is currently a vacant lot, and the above image shows the lot looking in from the main access at the southwest corner of the site. You can see that the elevation difference in the rear. That's the established green space that borders the residential. Here's another image looking north from the sidewalk. Once again, that green space area wouldn't be developed, so it would keep that visual and physical buffer. This is the last image of the site. This is looking right where the new area would be landscaped and fenced. You can see the exit ramp from Highway 1 in the right there. So the municipal plan has designated the area as regional retail center. The majority of Fairville Boulevard is the same, and the site itself abuts residential on the north, separated by that elevation difference, and then across the street is largely park designated land. The subject site and much of the surrounding area is commercial, and it's zoned corridor commercial, which aligns with the municipal plan and does allow for self-storage facilities. Letters were sent to all property owners within 100 meters of the subject site on November 2nd, and then a public notice was posted on November 16th on the city website. As of this presentation, no letters have been submitted. Staff and PAC are in alignment and recommend the council approve rescinding the former Section 39 conditions that limited the site to the proposed development filed in 1978. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I will ask if there's anyone here this evening who would like to speak against the application. I'll ask again. I'll ask 3 times if there's anyone here who would like to speak against this application. And I'll ask for the 3rd time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against 1250 Fairville Boulevard application. Okay, so hearing no one, I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Come on down. I'll get you to give us your name, please.
Your Worship, Matthew Joyce, representing 627036 I just want to thank the city staff. They were very helpful in helping me fill out the applications. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the project going.
All right, I'm going to ask you to stay there for just a second and ask my team, does anyone have any questions for Matthew? Councillor Ogden has a question. He's up first. Go ahead.
Well done, Matt. Well done growing a small business. I hope you really do a good job of beautifying. Thank you.
That is the plan. Thank you.
Councillor Harris is up next. Councillor?
Not a question, Your Worship, just another high five. You're doing a great job, Matt. It's good to see the company grow and take another place there. Have an empty lot on Fairville and do something with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the project. I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. So if not, I will now close the public hearing, and I will ask my team if you have any questions for staff. And hearing, oh yes, wait, now I do have something. Councillor Stewart, over to you.
No question, Your Worship. Just a good project, good location, and the proponent is an excellent community supporter, so I have no doubt that they're going to do a fantastic job with this. Got my support.
Matt, you've got a lot to live up to here. I'm going to run over there and take a look at it as soon as it's done. Okay, so City Clerk, what are the motions we need?
Your Worship, just one motion in this case to rescind previous Section 59 conditions.
Take a motion, Councillor Hickey and the Deputy, to rescind the previous Section 59 conditions on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations. You're on your way. Thanks. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 9.2 on the agenda, and this is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with the PAC report and staff presentation for 89 to 91 Redhead Road.
Thank you. Back to Ms. Poffenroth for the intro.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening's second public hearing is for an application for a rezoning and Section 59 amendment application that was submitted by Joe Roberts for the property located at 89 to 91 Redhead Road. The application is seeking to rescind the existing Section 59 conditions and to rezone a portion of the site from R2 2-unit residential to CG general commercial to facilitate the development of a parking lot for an existing commercial business. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is recommendations of approval for the rezoning and rescinding of the existing Section 59 conditions. I'll now turn it over to Thomas Llewellyn, the planner on the file, for the staff presentation. Thanks.
Thomas, over to you.
Thank you. The applicant is seeking to subdivide a piece of land from 91 Redhead Road and add it to 89 Redhead Road in order to increase the size of their existing parking lot. The subdivision requires rezoning due to 91 Redhead Road being zoned 2-unit residential and 89 Redhead Road being zoned general commercial. The applicant is also seeking to remove the existing Section 59 conditions on the property as they are no longer relevant or in effect. The subject site is located immediately south of Bayside Drive on Redhead Road. The house on the right in the picture is 91 Redhead Road, and towards the back in this picture is 89 Redhead Road, so there's quite a bit of separation from the street. The existing building at 89 Redhead Road, which is zoned general commercial, has existed for quite some time. North and east of the property is overwhelmingly industrial, with the industrial park to the east and the Irving facilities to the north. This portion of Redhead Road until Midwood Avenue to the south is a small neighborhood before more rural-style development along Redhead Road. The subject site is located within the stable residential zone designation of the municipal plan. Commercial uses are permitted within the stable residential designation. Again, the subject sites are currently zoned 2-unit residential at 91 Redhead Road and general commercial at 89 Redhead Road. On May 28th, 1986, the properties were rezoned from 1 to 2 family suburban residential to general business. Section 59 conditions were placed on the property that stipulated the creation of a fencing between the two properties, as well as operating hours of a motorcycle shop that is no longer in operation. On November 6th, letters were sent to all property owners within 100 meters, and we received 1 letter of opposition. Staff and PUC are recommending the approval of rezoning for 91 Redhead Road. The piece of land that be subdivided and amalgamated into 89 Redhead Road from 2-unit residential to general commercial, and the removal of the now defunct Section 59 conditions that were placed on 91 Redhead Road instead of 89 Redhead Road.
Thank you, Thomas. So I will open the public hearing, and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the project, the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against this application on Redhead Road. I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Please come forward and give us your name.
I'm the owner of 89 Redhead. My name's Charles Mercer.
Charles Mercer?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We just want to, we're very limited space. Our business has grown quite a bit, and there's an old rundown garage that's on the space that hasn't been used in nearly 15 years. So we'd like to remove that and clean up the parking area and, just develop 6 or 7 parking spots is all we're up to, so.
Okay, I'm just going to ask my team if anyone has any questions for you, Mr. Mercer. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mercer, for coming. I appreciate that. I'm just wondering about possibly what would your feeling be about putting a fence around your property?
Putting a fence around the whole property would be pretty hard, but we do plan on putting a fence up on the perimeter side of the 91 property. The lady wants a privacy fence put up there, and we're going to put one up there for her.
On the 91 side, you said, not 97, is it 97?
Yeah, no, so 91 is the one that's in front of my building.
Okay.
This one's 89 to 91.
Yep.
This one, your one.
Was that 91, the letter that we got? I have it in my bag.
No, the person that you're talking about, Muse, she's at 97.
97.
This one's 89 to
Yeah,
91.
she's kind of beside us, not in front of us.
Okay. That's not where you're going to put the fence in between your
No.
property and hers?
No.
Is there any opportunity that you would feel comfortable doing that? I mean, I guess my feeling is on this is there is a whole lot of like R2 in the area. And, it is harder. Of course, we do have heavy industrial not too far behind your properties, right? So, but I do think to have commercial right in there, it's not really a unpractical ask, So are you comfortable with doing that?
Well, we've been there for nearly, I would say 16, 17 years, and everything we've done with that property has definitely increased the value of the neighbor's property. We took a rundown old building and fixed the driveway, put water and sewage in, put new siding, windows, doors. We have a couple of small apartments above my shop. It's very quiet, peaceful there. I'm just looking to get places to park a couple of vehicles. We're not going to put up a big bunch of stuff in around the dooryard. Like literally my staff has run out of room to park. We're just trying to, the parking lot will look a lot better than what's there, I guess is what I'm getting at.
So I appreciate you looking after your property. So are you saying no?
I would like to not put a fence up in between our properties, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for Mr. Mercer? All right, that looks like that's it. I'm going to call, you can have a seat, and I'll call to see if there's anyone else here. So I'll ask for the third time, or probably the second time, I guess, if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. All right, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask the team if you have any questions for staff, for Thomas. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Thomas. Hi. Just wondering what your thoughts are. I mean, obviously Mr. Mercer said he was going to put fencing on one side of the property. My first thought would be to make it even look consistent, it would be best to have a fence on both sides of the property. What is your feeling on that from a planning perspective and knowing that the zones are, R2 in the area?
I think it's kind of a special case given that the property is already zoned general commercial. It's just the portion of land that's being amalgamated into it that is being rezoned. So there isn't much in that way that we could. Now, if this was a lot that was purely 2-unit residential and was going to general commercial, it's probably something we would pursue further. But given that the lot has existed as a business use for 40-ish years, it's not something that we were pushing for.
Okay. I have another question, if I can direct it to Common Clerk. Will the letter that we receive before the meeting end up in the council packet when it goes forward next in 2 weeks? Or probably you would end up doing updates for the packet online.
Yes, so the answer to that question is yes. When we receive items that are late, we do a supplemental agenda, and
Okay.
we would republish the council agenda to include any items that were added.
Okay, just out of respect for privacy. So I just wanted to mention then that, the proponent mentioned that when it was zoned previously, there should have been those restrictions put in, but it hadn't been put in, so they're asking for it now. Do you still feel the same way as you did before, Thomas? Like, I'm just thinking, I think that it's a reasonable ask.
I agree. There's just kind of a limited amount that we can push unless it's kind of stipulated within the bylaw. And given that it's an existing, it's a little bit trickier.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I think as well, Counselor, that there is a letter. It's not as fulsome as this one, but there was a letter from Ms. Muse in the kit as well with some of her concerns. And I think that we've tried to address those to a certain extent. Anyway, all right. I guess that's it for questions for staff. So I will pass it over to the clerk for the motions that are required.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this case, we require 2 motions, approval of first reading by title and approve second reading by title.
Take a motion to approve first reading by title. Councillor Lowe and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
And I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor Radwan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 9.3, another public hearing. This is for Section 59 amendment at 1429 Loch Lomond Road.
Okay, I'm passing this one as well over to Ms. Poffenroff for an intro.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening's final public hearing is for an application for a Section 59 amendment that was submitted by Michael Goldenberg for the property located at 1429 Loch Lomond Road. The application is seeking to amend the existing Section 59 conditions to incorporate a revised development concept for a residential development. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is recommendations of approval of the amended Section 59 conditions. I'll now turn it over to Mark Reed, the senior planner on the file for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Amy. Your Worship and Council, this final application this evening is a Section 59 amendment for a rezoning that was approved in 2022. The applicant is seeking to amend conditions imposed on that 2022 rezoning to accommodate a revised development plan. They're proposing to change the 2 multi-unit buildings in the western portion of the site to 4 stories instead of 3, and from 40 units each to 30 units. And then in the eastern portion of the site, they had proposed 5 multi-unit buildings having a mix of 4 to 6 units per building. They are now proposing 24 townhouse units in the eastern portion of the site that would be owner-occupied through a condominium. This represents an overall increase from 82 to 104 units. There was a cap of 105 on the previous rezoning, and the access is also shifted over slightly to the east. This shows the initial proposal is approved with the 2 30-unit buildings in the western portion of the site and the 5 smaller multi-units in the eastern portion. The current proposal has 3 8-unit townhouse buildings in the eastern side, and then the 2 larger 40-unit buildings on the western side of the site. And then this is a rendering showing the view from Loch Lomond Road of the massing of the buildings. We have another rendered design here showing the larger multi-unit building in the upper left, and then the townhouses in the lower right. And then some additional details of the multi-unit buildings showing the exterior design, incorporating facade articulation, balconies, and roofline design, as well as differentiation in siding materials to address the massing of the building. Again, some other renderings of the rear and side of the multi-unit buildings. And we also have a rendering of the townhouse concept showing articulation and differing cladding materials there as well. These Section 59 amendments only apply to the front 1.92 hectare portion of the site that was rezoned in 2022. The remainder of the 7.6 hectare site to the rear would still retain its R2 zoning, which it has today. Just a view of the site from Loch Lomond Road. We have another view of the site from the end of Norman Drive looking to the west as well. Here's a view looking east towards Lakewood Court. And we do have similar scale multi-unit development in the area. This is a building that was recently constructed further to the west along Loch Lomond Road. The site is designated as stable residential in the city's municipal plan. The rezoning was approved in 2022, and staff are of the opinion that the proposal still conforms to the stable residential policies established in the municipal plan. It is a location along an arterial road, which is an appropriate location for higher density residential infill such as this. There's separation provided from adjacent low density areas through a water course, as well as landscaping that is proposed by the developer. The density is equivalent to existing multiple unit developments in the area, and adequate servicing capacity exists. Also, the building forms and density that the developer is proposing is consistent with both the underlying mid-rise residential and low-rise residential zoning. Staff are of the opinion the revised proposal still conforms to the city's municipal plan. In terms of zoning, it's just the front part of the site that was rezoned where it has the RM and the RL zoning. So in terms of amendments to the conditions, the first one that's being sought is an overall change to the development concept. This would represent an increase in the number of units from 82 to 104 and increase the scale of the multi-unit buildings in the western portion of the site and change the building topology in the eastern portion from multi-unit buildings to townhouses. Staff are recommending the request be approved with a limitation that the RM portion of the site be limited to 2 buildings with a maximum height of 4 stories, and that the RL portion of the site be limited to the proposed cluster townhouses with a limit of 8 units per building. Staff are also proposing an overall unit cap of 114 units for the development, which provides the developer with some additional flexibility should they need to add a few more units as the development progresses. Landscaping, the developer has asked to revise the timing of the berm in the eastern portion of the site. What they're proposing is to retain the existing vegetation and then construct that berm prior to the townhouse construction. Staff are of the opinion that this is a reasonable request and are recommending that that condition be revised to retain the existing vegetation within 20 meters of the eastern property line until the first building is zoned in the RL portion of the site. And then when that first townhouse building is proposed for construction, then that berm would have to be constructed. We're also recommending an additional requirement for enhanced landscaping along the western side of the site access, just to basically provide some additional visual buffering of that large parking area for the residents of the proposed townhouse units. The exterior building design, we are recommending a revised condition relating to the facades facing Loch Lomond Road. We're looking for to retain the higher degree of design control on the 40-unit building but relax it on the townhouse building, given the smaller scale of that proposed townhouse building. The developer also requested that the development timeline be re-examined. That was imposed by council in 2022, and it requires currently the entire development to be constructed within 6 years issuance of the first building permit. Community planning is recommending that this requirement be eliminated. The other Section 59 conditions would remain as proposed in 2022. Those would pertain to the design of the private access, pedestrian connections, detailed design of the building and site through the required building site and landscaping plans, design of the water servicing, requiring that any downstream upgrades to or the city's infrastructure be the developer's responsibility, confirmation of a required Wawa permit, and a developer contribution to area crosswalk upgrades. It does also require revised council dissents to any required local government services easements for water and sanitary services, as well as money in lieu of lands for public purposes related to the subdivision of any lots in the development. In terms of engagement, letters went out in November to folks within 100 meters of the site, and notice of tonight's public hearing was provided on the city's website on November 16th. At the PAC meeting, the proponents spoke in favor, and we had 2 area residents speak in opposition, expressing concerns largely focused on density and traffic. We also received 10 letters from area residents. Staff's recommendation was to amend the conditions as outlined in the report, and basically the required council assents to the easements and money in lieu of LPP. PAC did tweak a recommendation requiring additional landscaping within the parking area for the proposed multi-unit buildings, and staff concur with that amendment, and that's provided in the attached resolution sheet as well as the Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I will open the public hearing, and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Hi, my name's Trudy Hanley. I live at 56 Old Lake Trail.
Thank you, Trudy.
I think this is it. Second here. Yeah. Sorry about that. So good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I would like to start by saying that I would like to voice concerns regarding the proposed changes to the development at 1429 Loch Lomond Road. Common Council is being asked to void all previous Section 59 conditions and variances in lieu of new ones, some of which completely negate the previous agreements and compromises that the developer proposed and presented to Council and residents in 2022. There are a number of new Section 59 amendments and requested variances related to increased density and apartment building size that I oppose. I do not think that these specific changes should be approved. The City of St. John is a city of neighborhoods, each with its own unique geography, personality, and density. Our neighborhoods span from the historic to the recently built, from urban to rural, from dense and vibrant to spacious and peaceful. These incredibly diverse areas combine to form a city we all love. The above quote is part of the city's marketing strategy on the website to welcome newcomers and entice people to come and live in St. John. How can the city promote neighborhoods here like this when the overall intent seems to be to remove the uniqueness, drastically increase density, and create large apartment complexes of buildings and asphalt? These developments are impacting so many existing neighborhoods and not necessarily in a good way. The picture is Old Lake Trail and is used as a primary image of neighborhoods for all of the Forest Hills and Lakewood areas on the city website to promote a spacious and desirable neighborhood. The building height comparison shows how much larger the new proposed buildings are compared to the previous approved buildings. The proposed 40-unit building, which is the bottom one, 40-unit four-story buildings, have an overall size 41% larger than the previous proposed 30-unit three-story. The revised size difference becomes apparent when you see the previous and proposed buildings together, as they're shown here. The size increase is achieved through the revised Section 59 amendments and variance changes to decrease property line setbacks and increase building heights, and should not be allowed. Affordable housing seems to be a main concern by council. The developer has changed from 9 affordable housing units under the federal provincial initiative to 8 affordable under CMHC's program. The federal model of affordability requires units to be permanently remained affordable. Under CMHC, the affordable housing rents can be adjusted to market rates after 10 years. This removes the 9 affordable units after a 10-year period. The driving force for some councillors to allow this development was the potential to have 9 affordable housing units. Now it seems that if affordable housing does go in, it can be removed after 10 years. How does this help the city or the residents' need for affordability? Rent evictions, private building owners, increasing rents to market rates, and homes converted to rentals is causing a loss of affordable housing options. People currently in rentals are now unable to afford them or asked to leave. Market rates are out of reach for most people who need them. Then the removal of the proposed affordable units after 10 years does nothing to help the future of affordable housing in the city. Allowing the developer to increase the density and the size of the apartment buildings does not solve any affordability issues. It simply increases rental choices for those who can already afford it. Home ownership can reduce social differences, and it plays an important role in social and economic stability and growth, and is a long-term investment in communities. Home ownership can be the biggest source of wealth for some people, leading to a more even distribution of wealth in a community, and can be big steps towards personal financial independence. There's been a major shift towards the building of rental apartments. An increase in population contributes to the majority of this demand. Rental apartments are an initial short-term preference for most. However, studies and general public reference have shown that most people prefer to own their own home. Most young people and families aspire to own a home, even if it's not a large one. This 20-year spending term shows that 3 rental units over a 20-year period can attain over $1 million in profit. Now multiply this by hundreds. Versus home ownership, which over a 3-year period for 3 homes can be close to $1 million in invested personal wealth. Imagine this multiplied by hundreds. Many more people investing in their own future and financial independence. This shows that with the money you would spend towards rent, a person is more likely better off to purchase a home if there were more homes available to purchase, empowering more residents rather than landlords. The developer is again asking to further increase density and apartment building size over and above what was already agreed to council. Home ownership, whether it be standalone, condominiums, or somewhere in between, is right now a challenge and unattainable for a lot of people. Families and residents in general are unable to enter the housing market due to the drastic shortage of homes. The need for quick, short-term solutions and the profitability of rentals is creating a financial, social, and housing imbalance for city residents. Private developers and companies are purchasing homes as rentals, building new market-based rental units with little to no affordable aspects, and existing rental units are being renovated to market-based, increasing rents beyond the affordable limits. Moderate single-family duplexes and townhomes are also in great need, but these are not as financially beneficial for developers or landlords. Therefore, these housing types are falling by the wayside. The conversion of owned homes to rentals and the lack of new builds is forcing most people who would prefer ownership into rental options. Allowing this development to move forward, creating larger and denser apartment buildings, will not improve affordability. The city needs all housing types to remain affordable and sustainable. I would encourage council to keep the changes related to the proposed townhomes, leaving the buffer area intact and undisturbed until the time of construction for these homes. I am asking you to oppose the revised variances in Section 59 amendments, which allow for the increase in the apartment building's height and footprint size. I'm opposed to the density increase of the apartment buildings beyond the current allowed 30 units. Thank you.
All right, hold on for a second there, Trudy. I'm just going to check and see if anyone on my team has any questions for you this evening. Okay, I don't see any questions, but thank you for being here this evening. So I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Oh, please come forward and give us your name.
Good evening, Council. My name is Seamus Hanley. I live at Old Lake Trail, 56 Old Lake Trail. I'd like to speak tonight about some concerns I have with the changes of the proposals to the development for 1429 Loch Lomond Road. Back in February of 2022, as you probably remember, this development was before Council, and after hearing much opposition and concerns from the community, the developer came back with conditions that are currently in place. This was discussed extensively by Council and voted on and approved. Now, the proposed density of the development has increased from 84 units up to 114, as we just heard. This is a 40% increase over what was agreed to, and we'll see the buildings go another story higher from 3 to 4. Some would justify this increase in density by the need for affordable housing. My question is, will the developer remain committed to the original 14% affordable housing units? Or is the affordable housing component something that can be used to get a development approved and then quietly forgotten about as the project progresses? Well, it's true that many people at retirement age would prefer to rent and not deal with house maintenance. We also have a growing population here consisting of many young people and families trying to achieve home ownership. That's their dream, the same way it was my dream. If we wish to retain these people, there should be more alternatives for them than just more rental units. As we know, property ownership can play a crucial role in people's ability to build wealth. The developers are well aware of this, which is why they are here. But wouldn't it be nice if the city could provide this same opportunity on a smaller scale for regular, ordinary residents in the form of opportunities of home ownership? One of the positives of this developer's new proposal, however, is it includes the possible construction of 24 townhouses that people could buy and own. However, will these actually be constructed? Is there anything that requires the developer to build these? Or can this proposal be reworded once again in a couple of years to have another large building go up in the place of where these townhouses are supposed to go now? I understand that the development has to happen or that development has to happen to accommodate a growing population. The developer's needs are important, but the city's short-term and long-term needs also need to be considered. And the developers commit to certain conditions, they need to be honored. They need to honor those commitments, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to check and see if anyone has any questions for you this evening. Okay, not seeing any. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I will just let both of you know that our kits for this one item is about 128 pages. I've read both of your letters at least twice. I think it's been in there in duplicate, so we do have your letters as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Redwine, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Seamus, for coming in. I just wanted to ask you, because of course it's a couple weeks before Christmas here, have you guys had any connection with the rest of the neighborhood to see what their feeling was about the project at this point with the new changes?
Yeah, well, you're probably wondering why there's not more people here. I think the general sentiment is that it's probably not going to do any good. I mean, the general sentiment of the project is still pretty much the same. I think some people have kind of given up battling against it, but I know that the townhouse portion was considered favorable, as I just stated. I don't know if that's a question, if that's going to actually materialize. people don't care for the extra story on the buildings. It was bad enough when they were 3 and now it's 4. So that's a sticking point. So that's the general sense that I get.
Okay, no, that's great. I mean, that's some things that I've heard too. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Okay, I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Okay, come down and give us your name, please.
Hello, my name is Paul Mangin. It's nice to see everybody today. I am Michael Goldenberg's business partner in this project. I guess I just wanted to say that we're back here today asking for the fourth story for a number of different reasons. As far as the buildings go, it allows us to be able to afford sprinklers, extra elevators, that type of stuff, so the economies of scale go in our favor. The dwellings on the other side of the property, they were never going to, the numbers don't work for the smaller units. So we looked at different options, and one of the things was making properties more attainable. And the only way we could do that would be to townhomes in a condo-style environment. So that's why we ended up putting that there. And it also helps that the neighbors always didn't like the idea of apartment buildings being on that side. So those units, the intent is to put them for sale, and hopefully the pricing will be attainable for everyone.
Okay. I'm just going to ask if anyone here then has any questions. I see a light on. Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have a couple of questions, Paul. Thank
Sure.
you for coming. I appreciate it. It makes it easy to get some questions answered. So just wondering what the timeline is on the buildings, the apartment buildings versus townhouses, if it's all approved.
The buildings will be done in preferably together, but we haven't quite established that yet. So it's probably going to be one after the other. And we're looking at different ways to build those. We're inquiring about, I've lost my train of thought, but where the buildings will be built off-site, or the sections of the buildings will be built off-site and dropped in to greatly speed up the building or the time in construction. And then after the buildings are built, I mean, all the infrastructure will be in there for the townhomes.
So is that why you're thinking to do the apartments first and then the townhomes to make sure all the infrastructure is everywhere?
Yeah, we'd have to build the infrastructure along the road, and the townhouses are on the other side, other side of the road.
Just also curious, I mean, obviously the townhouses are the bright light in this, as Seamus had mentioned. Just wondering why you've just wanted to keep the bush. I mean, I don't consider them really, there's not too many big trees over there on that right-hand side, which is the east end, I guess. Originally, I think the plan was to have some bigger trees put in before there would be buildings put in. And I think about specifically like the Gadeen's house, like it's right there, right? So, I can't imagine building these great big massive buildings and not having bigger trees put in. So can you give me any
Actually,
response to that?
I saw the presentation from the city. We're, like, when we go to build the foundations for the building and stuff, that dirt has to be removed. So we could build the berm quicker if need be, right? We're just going to move the dirt over and build the berm, and then we can plant the trees on them right away.
Yeah, no, that's right. It does make sense. Yeah, I guess, and one thing that I will say, I don't know how much you agree with me, I felt like the staff pictures don't really reflect like how close that house is to your property. You know, like that house is right there next to your property. So anyway, if anybody wanted to look online on Google Maps, you can tell how close the houses are. So I think that berm is extremely important, but that's just my opinion anyway. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Like I said, we can build that berm right away. We're not going to pay to have the dirt trucked off just to have it trucked back later.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I understand that rationale, but at the same time, for privacy, while there's builds going, it's very important for the neighborhood, I think, to have that berm up. And thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
So I'll ask for the second time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Mr. Sear, come down. Give us your name for formality.
Thank you, Worship. Jeff Sear with Envision St. John, here to speak in favor of the application. We've worked with the applicant for a number of years, actually even going back to the predecessor agencies when they were first looking into the region. And so we're here to speak in favor of the project. We've worked with the applicants. We feel pretty comfortable that the intention behind the applicant's project is to move forward with it based off of our dealings with the applicant. And should economic forces support it, we feel comfortable that they're going to work expediently on this. We also want to express the need for units. Right now, we are in a housing crisis. A big part of that is that we have a massive supply problem. We grew by 3,000 people last year. We put 600 units. We started construction on 600 units. We're probably on about pace for somewhere in the ballpark of a similar result coming this year. And there's direct correlations with significant increases in rent and the rapidly decreasing vacancy rate. Additionally, a lot of projects like this are struggling with the onset of a rapid increase in construction costs amid higher interest rates. And, quite frankly, there's been a lot of projects that have been stuck. And it's critical that, we ensure that projects are designed to be economically efficient, or else they're not going to be able to get across the line. Right now, there's a very thin line between what type of a project is viable and what type of project is not. Right now, most of the only developers that are able to move them across the line are ones that have their own work crews and can make things efficient. We need more than just those builders. We need all of our builders and all of our developers to build. So we need to find efficiencies, because if not, we're going to be stuck at this plateau of 600 units. With respect to, the types of units being proposed, we've been speaking about this. The mix is going to need to change. Preferences are changing in the housing market, and cost is going to change what will be viable. At the national level, what we've seen in terms of the housing market, apartment construction has increased about 200% the last number of years, row townhouses about 60%. Single detached families have decreased about 50%, and probably the ones that are getting built across the country are being built on increasingly smaller and smaller lots. So a mixed development style is really where things are headed. St. John and the St. John region is not there. We need a greater mix. We're going to need to start pursuing and getting our developer communities to do more mixed subdivisions with townhouses, with apartments to help carry the infrastructure and to make ownership attainable as well. With that, if anyone has any questions.
Councillor Hickey has a question for you. Over to you, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Not so much a question as much as thanks. Jeff, appreciate your effort on this as well. Hope to see more of you in future presentations like this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radbon, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you coming here too, Mr. Sear. So just a question for you, because I know that you have experience in urban planning. With your opinion, do you think this is an ideal location to have affordable housing units where there's barely any supports there for transit?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor. I do sometimes have to be careful about providing urban planning advice, because I'm not an urban planning consultant. I'm not an urban planning consultant or an
Yeah.
urban planner of the city, so, I'd recommend your staff to provide that. But what I would say is that there are a number of challenges that are going to require us to have to contemplate denser developments in different areas of the city. One is just pure development economics. Right now, the cost of your typical single-family home over just the last 3-4 years, modest 1,500 square foot home, that cost has gone from $450,000 to $650,000, and the number of people with no other debts that could carry that has gone from about 50% to about 15% or less. Neighborhoods are going to need to change. We also have a real challenge with land supply right now. Not necessarily because of what the city zoned and designated within its plans, but the inefficiencies of how the market works in New Brunswick. Properties are assessed very low. It leads to not a lot of land moving at prices that can work. And right now, with the issue of cost and the economics of development, getting a very competitive price point is really critical for projects to be viable. So part of the challenge is we need to significantly increase units. We don't have a lot of places to put it, and viable projects are going to need that mix to move forward.
Thank you, Jeff. That sounds like another frustrating thing about Service New Brunswick assessments, but I appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, Jeff, that's it. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'll ask for the third time, if there is anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the project? So not hearing anyone, I will close the public hearing. Counselor Ogden, you can now go get your water if you want it. And I'll ask my team if you have any questions for staff. Counselor Redbone, over to you.
Thank you. I'll take Jeff's advice. If I could throw that question over to Mr. Reed, that would be great.
Your worship, through you to the councillor with respect to the question regarding transit. The site is served by transit, both fixed routes and the city's new Flex on Demand service. So there is transit there in that area.
5 times a day.
Pardon me?
5 times a day.
But we also have the Flex service. So, it is served by transit. And that's one of the things is, density and development tends to drive demand for services and make, services in the future such as transit more economical. And,
Yeah.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg, right? So.
It is. I'm also wondering, so like in Plan SJ, it says to put 40 units on 1 net hectare. So this is 1.92 hectares. So based on that, I would say roughly it means about 78 units. And this is calling for 104 with the potential to go up to 114. So that's 26 more units that are, that the developer is looking to do than what's in Plan SJ. So how do we rationalize that to coordinate with Plan SJ?
So in terms of the density, the plan does set general targets for density. So generally, the challenge is that we don't have a set target for a stable residential area such as this, but the plan does give us a range of density. So for example, if it's primarily a low density intensification area, we're looking at between 20 to 45. If it's more of a low to medium density residential, we're in a range of 35 to 90. And this one here, where it's 114 units on a 1.92 hectare site, we're generally looking at probably about 55 units per hectare, give or take, which is within that range of a low to medium density residential area. And I also note too that, this particular site is located on an arterial roadway where, we like to see higher density developments as opposed to further back within a residential neighborhood.
Where is that at, just for my reference, in Plan SJ? Like 90 units?
That's in the various policies for the intensification areas, and it's also provided on the municipal plan policy review prepared by staff. There's a summary there of the density in our our assessment of how the density of this development does conform with both the density found in the surrounding neighborhood and the guidelines provided by the plan.
Okay, Ms. Reed, just help me. This is not an intensification area, so how does that correlate to that? Like you would be looking at Milledgeville or, like retail densification, obviously East Point and Lancaster Mall area, but this is not really considered an intensification area.
Yes, the plan does not say we should only have higher density development within intensification areas.
Okay.
There are areas such as, vacant sites available for infill along arterial roads, such as this site, and many other areas along Loch Lomond Road that, from an urban planning perspective, are appropriate for this level of development.
I know I'm over my time. I just have one more. I don't know.
One more, that's fine.
Okay. Just also wondering why there was no real consideration given for a crosswalk or traffic lights. I know the traffic report does not say that there's much traffic, and I would agree that sometimes of the day, there's not a lot of traffic. But like Trudy had said, and I saw that in the PAC meeting, she was kind of questions about traffic, but certain times of the day, 7:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock at night, it's bumper to bumper. It's not 401, but it is stop and start, stop and start. And I know because I drive there every single day. So how are we not looking at that? I'm just worried that down the line, that'll be another conversation for our budget, so.
Your worship, through you to the councillor, there was a traffic impact review conducted for the development by a traffic engineer or consulting firm, and they did look at that question. There is, we do have accepted standards and guidelines in Canada provided by the Transportation Association of Canada that look at volumes at intersections such as this and provide guidance in terms of how to calculate if and when traffic signals are warranted. And in this case, it was reviewed by the developer's consultant, and traffic signals aren't warranted.
And I understand the timeline.
I'm not disputing that, Loch Lomond Road is a busy road. Part of the challenge there is, not only does it serve, areas in this vicinity of the development, but it's one of the gateways into the city. So it serves, Willow Grove, St. Martin's, areas of, Rossay and Quispam Sis too. So.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to feel confident in that traffic engineering, but it was done during COVID, so that's where I feel challenged with that. But thank you, I appreciate that. Anyway, we'll see how this goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Reed. All right. So I don't see any other questions. So City Clerk, over to you for what is required.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this case, there are 3 motions required. The first would be to rescind the previous conditions. Second, approve Section 59 conditions, and third, assent to subdivision plans.
Okay, so do I have a mover for the rescind previous conditions? Deputy and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Redwan, motion carried.
Next is to approve Section 59 conditions.
Approve Section 59 conditions. Do I have a mover? Councillor Sullivan. And do I have a seconder on that one? The deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Redwan opposed. Motion carries.
And the final is to assent to subdivision plans.
Mover on assent to subdivision plans. I have a mover, the Councillor Harris, and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Redwan opposing. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for being here this evening. City Clerk, next item, back to you.
Next item is under delegations presentations. It's item 8.1 on the agenda, and this is the Fundy Key and Atole Makamak presentation.
Mr. Fogan, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. To you and Council, the purpose of tonight's presentation is just to give an update to you and to the public as to how these projects have been unfolding and where we are to date. So I'm pleased to be able to present here on Fundy Key and the Idoli Makhamik. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly and didn't murder it too much, but I've been practicing. I can say we're pleased to say that the Fundy Key site, as you can probably hear from the driving of the piles, has been turned over to the developer. Official turnover is yet to actually happen, but they are working on the site. So as I go through tonight, I'll highlight some certain key aspects of the site and give you a little bit of an update on how each one of these components is progressing. For the skating surface, the surface is complete. The ice plant is being installed. It's in the basement of the stage building. And right now, the space will be occupied for laydown area for the construction of the patio structures. The decision was made to use an existing ice surfacer within the city's allotment of ice resurfacers. So we don't need to purchase a new one for this space. Although we did determine through the project that we do need a small building in order to house the ice resurfacer. So there is a foundation that's been complete, and the design is complete for the building to go, temporary building, I guess, to go right next to that surface. The consideration there was the closer to the ice surface, the less rocks and salt it may pick up on its way. So it's important for it to be right next to the ice surface. There's a new amphitheater planned along Harbor Passage, so it's in progress. There are certain components that will be delayed for better weather in the spring, such as plantings and paintings. And there's some other components as well that we're coordinating with the developer to make sure they're installed at the right time. There is, as you can see right now, there is some cranes in the area and they're swinging steel. So not the ideal time to have pedestrians accessing the site, but the asphalt is laid, and but it will open when it's safe to do so. The tidal steps are under construction. We ran into some challenges in underground infrastructure in that component. There were surprises as they worked to dig down to the foundation level. They're also working around the tide cycles, and this work has required some redesign as well, which added to some delays. And there's a docking system that the city has previously used at the Market Slip. What's been determined now is that the rebuild of the seawall has narrowed the slip slightly, and also the docking system also required a steel pole to connect to. The steel pole was removed for the rebuild, and so right now we have a quote for a new docking system of about $110,000, or we could reconfigure the existing one and redeploy it. But the commitment is to put the docks back in. We're just figuring out how best to do that right now. And this component should be completed by May. The stage has turned into an interesting visioning project, I'll say. The city and the restaurants in the area do have mutual goals, which is to bring more people to the area and have the area enjoyed by the broader public. So that has led to some interesting considerations. The restaurateurs in the area have envisioned, I think, that they may host some major events, some major concerts a few times a year. And I think we'll be back to council to present a little bit that vision of what they're developing. But it's been interesting from not necessarily replacing exactly what was there and the use that was there before, as we've looked at new components and what we could add and what they may want to use it for. They've really been involved in that process, and it's kind of driving forward maybe a little bit of different use, and we may have a little bit of tweaks to that in the next coming months. So in that, we may look at adding back some components that were reduced during value engineering practices, such as screens, Wi-Fi, cameras, and heating in green room for that area. But we'll be back with that as we develop that vision with the restaurants. For the patios, as council may recall, the original vision was to have open air patios and basically replace what was there before, but it was changed mid-project to glassed-in patios. And that required some additional work, some HVAC redesign, and also be able to connect those buildings or the patios to the existing building, the building system. So the structure is arriving this week, and they'll use the skating area as a laydown area. And it's scheduled for completion by the end of April, so we can have our patio season, full summer of patio season. And though the HVAC, it is a separate capital project that council's already given approval for. We plan to award it to the contractor on site, as he does have control of the site until he's done. And we've negotiated a change order with that contractor to get that work done all at the same time, rather than waiting till afterwards. So overall, there were 3 separate projects in this area. It was the seawall, the Fundy Quay, and the redevelopment of what was formerly called the Market Slip. And these total of 3 projects are about 33 million. Market Slip portion is approximately 20 million in itself. And about 58% of that funding came from other levels of government, who have really taken the opportunity to leverage other levels of government for this project. So there are some budget impacts for sure. There were some change orders from unknown on sites. I can tell you there were days when they uncovered, well, there's some pictures here of some of the things that they uncovered, a ductwork that they didn't know existed. There were contaminated materials on sites that they didn't know existed. So there were some change orders, and changes had to be done mid-project. And this has added to some cost of it, but we are mitigating those costs as well. We do have an opportunity in front of us right now that we are seeking some additional funding from other levels of government. And with that funding, we were able to open some scope back in, add some components for the stage, and minimize any sort of budget impact. And at this point in time, we don't foresee coming back to council to ask for any additional funding from the city. But our overall budget analysis is being completed. And with that, that serves as my update. Open for any questions, council.
Any questions for the commissioner? Oh, Councillor Lowe, over to you.
As the city tenants or the ones that occupy, are they aware of what we just heard here tonight?
The restaurants?
Yeah, the tenants. They're city tenants, are they not?
Yeah,
They pay rent to the city?
They pay rent to Market Square.
Are they aware of what
They
you
are.
just said tonight?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Hickey, over to you.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Ian, I guess specific to Councillor Lowe's point, is there any room for compensation, I guess, for restaurants as we move forward in this strategy?
Through your worship to the council, we currently don't have that type of program within our capital budget program, but we are working with them to try to develop favorable terms in the lease agreement that may help them recover. We are keenly aware that they were impacted by COVID and then this construction project. So we're trying to be very mindful of that, and that's part of what we're also spending some time around the stage component as well, see what we can do to help them out. If their vision comes to life where they can have some large events and people there all the time, hopefully they'll be able to recover, but that's what we're working with them on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. You can certainly see the vision coming together. It's not hard to see the vision coming together just walking past. And I'm certainly excited for it. It's just a matter of making sure we can make sure everybody gets to that line. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Stewart, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Commissioner, do we have an idea when you say large events, capacity of people that you're thinking?
So that analysis is currently being going through that right now. Without the screens added back, you're probably limited in the hundreds of people. If you add back the screens, the performances could get up into 2,000 or 3,000.
So would we consider anything that went there to be in competition with Area 506?
Yeah, that's been a topic of discussion. I think both groups are committed to playing with each other and cooperating with each other. So at the same time, the 506 might be having a large event. The tenants at the boardwalk do not want to compete. They want to benefit from the secondary visits, I guess, of that. And the same thing in reverse. If they can bring tenants or they can bring people to that area when 506 isn't having a large event, then 506 may benefit from those additional visits as well.
Yeah, I certainly know that our friends and tenants down there have been struggling, and we've lost, we lost McGill's there not too long ago. So you pile on with COVID, then this. They certainly need some light at the end of the tunnel, and they need it quick.
Understood.
But other than that, we're on the right track. It's going to look beautiful.
All right, Commissioner, that's it. Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate the update. I had a quick question here. When I looked through this, was I looking at here in this thing? You say, let's see, challenges underground, no. What's the scoop on the ice surface? It says the ice surface, you're reusing a surface? Is that what you said?
We're using it as temporary laydown space currently.
The space is going to be
Yeah.
used for temporary laydown. I thought it was talking about the ice, the actual surface of the.
No, so the ice surface is complete and the ice plant is being installed. It's just we won't put it into use right now as it's being used for laydown service for other areas under construction.
So it says use existing ice resurfacer.
Yes, that's an existing Zamboni.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Zamboni's the
Okay.
company name.
I get what Zamboni is. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
No problem.
All right. I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Hickey and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 12.1, an update from the CAO on select catalytic projects.
Over to you, CAO.
Good evening. For the catalytic projects update, I'll provide a brief update on 3 of the infrastructure projects and a couple of the advocacy projects. I'll start first with an overview of Council's, 3 of Council's catalytic infrastructure projects. So the Fundy Key, the public space now named the Gathering Space, Idoli Makahamak. As Commissioner Fogan has just mentioned, he provided an update on that. So I'll just focus on the private sector development. We see a number of cranes down there on the site, multiple cranes. They're continuing to drive piles for the foundation of their new building that will be located on the southwest corner of the property. The pile driving will continue for approximately an additional 8 weeks before the contractor wraps up, the private developer wraps up that portion of the project. So bear with us with the noise as the contractor works through that. With respect to the Central Peninsula School Community Hub, the province, Anglophone South School District, and the city are continuing planning work on the new Central Peninsula School and the new North End School. There are several subcommittees working through various matters like parking and public access to shared spaces, traffic, engineering, and construction questions. With the Central Peninsula School, the city will also be re-engaging with stakeholders and continuing that discussion as it relates to the Turner Brewer Memorial and community use of the new South End Hub. While funding for the Community Hub in Central Peninsula has been announced for the North End Community Hub, the city has been re-engaging with community stakeholders on that to further discuss the need and the funding opportunities. And we remain optimistic that the province will commit the funding to accommodate the students and families that have been using the community hubs. Both schools remain slated to be open in September 2026. As it relates to our new comprehensive recreation facility, city staff over the past couple of months, as I've mentioned, I've worked with the Fundy Region Service Commission on the Regional Arena Needs Assessment, a requirement for provincial funding support for any new arenas or replacement arenas. So that assessment's been finalized and shared with the province. With the work with Deloitte on the assessment and looking at the various means of bringing best value to taxpayers, that work is wrapping up as we await a funding opportunity from other levels of government to advance that catalytic project. And switching to affordable housing, city team continues to advance council's priority of affordable housing, working on a number of key files, the awarded Rapid Housing Initiative project, the Barrett Green Residences, construction work still continues there on those 39 affordable units. In addition to RHI, our major funding application to the Housing Accelerator Fund remains with CMHC.
And at the November 14th council meeting, this council approved the submission of the letter to the federal housing minister, highlighting how the city's application aligns very well with the federal housing minister's top 10 housing accelerator fund best practices, and ending exclusionary zoning was a key issue of focus for municipalities. And so we've advocated for that, and we look forward to hearing positive response on that application. Lastly, as it relates to post-secondary education, the update on this is brief. Construction continues on the new 65,000 square foot building at the UNBSJ that will create the new Health and Social Innovation Center. And with that, Your Worship, that concludes my update.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the CAO? Councillor Hickey?
Just a quick one. Thanks very much, CAO. Is there any indication as to whether or not, once pile driving is done on Funday Key, if the construction will begin right away?
That is the intent, exactly. Yeah, construction is set to continue, and the plans look beautiful. It's a very large structure.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. I can hear the knocking all day in my office.
Okay, it looks like that's it. So I will take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Radwan, Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 12.2, 2023 work plan update.
This is going back over to the CAO from the podium. You should all have received the attachment this afternoon.
There we go. Good evening. As your CAO, I'm here this evening to present status update on the 2023 initiatives plan. Council is aware, but for the public's information, the plan was derived primarily from Council's priorities in the 10-year strategic plan. There are, however, a number of other items that contributed to the creation of this plan that I'll touch on. And really for context, the initiative plan is a plan that consists essentially of items related to working on the business, and Council has heard this before, really as opposed to working in the business. So working on the business is delivering those services, routine work, that is the majority of the demand on city resources, and it consumes the majority of our time. Working on the business, however, is really changing the way we do business in a lot of respects. So creating those new plans, strategies, policies, programs, conducting audits, reviews, studies, and implementing significant technology changes and asset improvements. As I mentioned, this plan is derived mainly from Council's priorities and 10-year strategic plan, but there's also Council's catalytic projects, municipal plans, policies, programs, strategies, audits, and Council resolutions. So the work we're focused on, as you can see, is very strategic. It's planned, budgeted, coordinated with multiple stakeholders for long-term positive impacts to the City of St. John. You've heard me mention this before. The reality is we always seem to have too many things on the go. But overall, I think the important point is that initiatives are moving forward. Great progress is being made, although delays do occur, but we're moving in the right direction. However, as anything new comes up, it does displace resources to other priorities, and that can have an impact or strain on resources. Although sometimes we need to pivot, of course, because great opportunities do come along. We don't have the opportunity to foresee everything as we put together these plans. And so the team has remained flexible, particularly as it relates to identifying and working towards achieving those key opportunities that arise during the year for the best results of St. John.
just a bit of a legend here to provide an overview in terms of the various slides that I'll be bringing you through. The green symbol means the work is progressing as planned in 2023 or scheduled for completion in Q1 of 2024. And I say Q1 of 2024 because this fall there were a number of items that were not part of the plan that arose and impacted the schedule by well over a month and a half approximately or more. So yellow means there is a slight adjustment to the schedule that fall within those three main categories that are listed here. Blue means there's a new commitment for a scope of work that carries forward from the work completed. And gray means the scope of work has been redefined, and the arrow is just that that planned scope of work is projected to be pushed forward into the new year, and the check mark that it's completed. So we'll jump right into it. Under Vibrant, we've got 13 different initiatives. First off, the first one is the team will implement 5 additional recreation programs. This has already been approved by council. So 4 of the 5 are completed. The new disc golf, as you recall, was opened. Passport to Parks returned this year. The block trailer was launched. Off-road wheelchair, I believe, has now arrived for use next year. And it's really the cricket field to go. So we have to identify the location, and those discussions are happening. For the next action, which is to implement the 2023 actions within the Affordable Housing Action Plan, priority effort here was to deal with the Rapid Housing Initiative opportunity that arose federally, and we're able to get those applications in, and 39 housing units are now under construction. There's also the Housing Accelerator Program. That was a new initiative in 2023, was not on the work plan. This one was added through Growth Committee as a priority because of the significant opportunity that it could bring to St. John. And that important file was advanced and the application submitted, and we're awaiting results. Now, for the next 2, you'll see there's yellow with an arrow, which means there is a schedule adjustment. The first, evaluate governance options that make recommendations for a municipal housing entity. A request for proposal was created for this, and through discussions at Growth Committee, it was decided we would hit the pause button on issuing this until the Housing Accelerator Program work was completed. And so we look forward to dealing with that in the new year. The next, the development of a revised policy for the sale of public lands with a clear preference for affordable housing possibilities as appropriate. That had a slight adjustment to the schedule because of priorities that rose unexpectedly for our general counsel's office that were not on the work plan. And I know we've had those discussions enclosed. We'll still move forward with this, but it'll be in Q1 of 2024 before we can turn our focus back to it. We have the next one, we have a development, we have developed a means to track our progress on the Central Peninsula Neighborhood Plan, and work is ongoing on this and will be completed in Q1 of 2024. On the next one, we're completing phase 2 of the Community Center's Needs Assessment. Work was delayed due to staffing issues. One of those positions has been filled, and the resulting vacancy is now to be filled. So the plan is to complete this also in Q1 of 2024. On the development of the Employment Diversity and Inclusion Policy, a draft policy is now completed, and we're planning to finalize it in Q1 as well. I'll touch on the last one, develop recommendations on the city's response to homelessness using a policy approach. Work has been ongoing with the province and with the nonprofit sector. And at this time, we're developing an encampment policy. And the agenda, on the agenda this evening is the vision statement. So work on this will continue in 2024. Development of the neighborhood plan in North End, that is going to be getting underway in the new year. And we were before you with an application to FCM for funding on that just over the past month or so. The plan to pedestrianize at least one street, that work is underway and on track. And the last, sorry, I moved to the next slide. And the last one, develop an arena strategy after the strategic plan and reform work is completed. We've actually, we have professional services engaged and we're advancing that one and advancing the comprehensive recreational facility catalytic project. And we'll look to at future additional facility needs assessment. That is complete and that's been endorsed at the regional level. So that one's advancing as well. Okay. Under Prosperous, we have 17 actions. I'll not go through all of them, but highlight some of them. The completion of the City Market Strategic Plan and implement priority actions. So the City Market 10-year strategic plan was presented to Council and adopted, and we now need to move forward with implementation, and there's a recommendation for $500,000 to go into reserves as part of our reserves recommendation this evening that will allow us to advance on some of these priorities. Develop and promote the City of St. John brand. Small City, Big Heart was launched this fall, as everyone knows, and so we need to continue moving forward with implementation of that. Develop new building incentive program that broadens beyond the peninsula and is coordinated with community enhancement program implementation. This is in the RFP stage at this time, and we'll be ready to engage a consultant, and the beautification grant has been expanded for that. Work on the strategic plan for industrial parks was advanced, and then as part of the process, it was determined to focus on the governance model. That has been advancing and is in the works and will be finalized in Q1 in 2024. And consolidating of operations into the Transit and Ross Avenue facilities to enable the sale and redevelopment of Boar's Head Road. Construction work is underway and work continues in accordance with the schedule. Complete the needs analysis and develop general parameters for comprehensive rec facility. That work is completed, and work on the next two are on track and progressing according to the plan. As it relates to consolidating the operation of Transit and Ross Avenue facilities to enable the sale of Boar's Head Road, I did touch on that one. Work on Market Slip public space and Harbor Passage extension. That was updated this evening. Work with the province and other stakeholders to advance the development of the innovative Central Peninsula Commons and the new North End School. Just updated on that. Work's continuing through 2024 and 2025 as they move into construction. The last one I'll highlight under Prosperous is the Visitor Information Center Welcome Center strategy. Work has been done with Envision. This year, the closure of the Highway 1 VIC, and it was relocated to the City Market, and construction of the Visitor Information Center as part of the EDI is planned for the future. Moving next to service, we have 9 actions. I'll highlight approximately half of them. Transforming Transit Plan is moving forward. The on-demand service was launched in a number of areas. The go-live date for electronic fares is scheduled to be around mid-January of the new year, so we're not far off from that. This month, the recommendation will also be going to the Transit Commission for the award of the contract on the CAD AVL system. That's moving forward as well for transit. Main Street Active Transportation, this project requires provincial support. Letters have been issued to DTI. Discussions are ongoing with them, and we'll have some more project clarity I expect in the month of January and the New Year's, we have meetings set up with them. Fire service review work is completed, but now in 2024, we'll proceed with the creation and plan to implement the 15-year fire service strategy. For the comprehensive parking study in the Central Peninsula, the RFP will be issued in the new year on that. And the last two, work is also ongoing on those. So, with respect to the annual symposium in collaboration with Envision, recently there was a modular session that was held by Envision. A broader symposium was going to be launched this fall, but due to impacts that occurred that weren't foreseen this fall, that has been set back to 2024 to launch. And lastly, on this slide, creating a long-term strategic plan for St. John Transit is to get started in the new year. Then under accountable, 13 actions, I'll highlight approximately half of these as most of them are moving in accordance with the plan. For the development of the 10-year HR strategy, proposals have been received in response to an RFP for consultant services. This one was tied to the budget approval as a new resource is being added in HR as part of the budget process that's recommended this evening, and that will help deliver on this. So some items will be rolled out in 2024 and full implementation of strategic actions starting in 2025. For the ERP system, the needs analysis and procurement is planned to be completed by the end of this year, so work is moving on that with project implementation, or the project will move into 2025 for full implementation. The long-term financial plan for the water utility continues with financial modeling and related financial plan work to be completed in Q1 of 2024. Following that, work will continue on the relevant policies. With respect to recreation subsidies review, RFP was prepared and issued. Overall, the project is delayed because there was no responses to the RFP for consulting work. But work has now been awarded and is scheduled for completion in May of next year. With respect to the long-term financial plan for the general fund, work is completed. And finalize revised procurement policy and implement. This is on track. Policy was approved by council in 2023 and implementation will be ongoing in 2024. And collective bargaining with Local 486 is completed and collective bargaining with ATU is ongoing at this time. With respect to asset management information system, the team is finalizing award of the contract with a vendor, and implementation of the system is planned for 2024. And A12, focused employee performance management, that's being merged as part of the HR workforce strategy. So really looking ahead to 2024, we will be providing an updated and integrated work plan. So we're actually going to take, and I know we've had discussions about this, or it's been raised in the past as far as like the Ernst & Young report. So we'll merge those actions out of that plan with this work plan. So we're not tracking multiple plans and have it all in one plan that we'll be reporting on. So we'll have one consolidated work plan for 2024. And that will tie back, of course, to the budget that is before you this evening for consideration. And lastly, Your Worship, I'd like to give a big shout out to the team who has been working tirelessly this year to advance on all of these various actions. They've been agile and responded to various challenges, significant challenges that arose during the year. So I'd like to thank them, everyone working on the business, but all of those who are working in the business, delivering the frontline services to residents and visitors of St. John on a daily basis. And with that, the recommendation is to receive and file the 2023 Initiatives Plan Update, Your Worship, subject to any questions.
All right, sounds good. I do have a couple of questions from my counselors for you. That's a lot of work, and if I had to pick out my favorites, it would be hard. It's like trying to pick your favorite child, but transit still comes up for me as one of the top ones. Councillor Ogden, over to you.
First of all, Brent, congratulations. It's quite a list, and it looks like it's being achieved. Results are very important. A couple things. Lately, a lot of people have been talking about tiny homes. Moncton just put up a tiny home community, and of course, we know about Fredericton's. If there was a developer out there who, and there are people who build tiny homes in the city, if there was a developer out there looking, and I'm saying this for public purpose, would the city be open to maybe trying to find some land for a tiny community? If a developer had came to us, would we send them to Jeff Sear, Jody, or Mr. Reed, or would that be something that we would look at?
Yeah, they could, through your worship, come in and see us. Housing is, of course, a very important topic. It's a critical component to our continued growth, particularly the tiny homes for those in need. So absolutely, we'd be receptive to that. And that's part of our policy as well that I touched on during this update in terms of, the actions that were identified in the plan that council has endorsed in terms of, making available lands for use of that nature so that we can enable the rapid growth of housing that meets the needs of those in need.
Secondly, and you and I have discussed this quite a few times, it's been going on since 2007. Is there any way we can send a letter to, I've met with the minister, I met with his assistant, I've talked to all the MLAs about it, is that, we talk about the city brand. The first thing most people see in the city is either coming in on cruise ship or our thruway, which is a huge piece of architecture. The exits and entrances, the terrible looking walls that have been washed since the Harbor Bridge Commission was there, the Stanley Street pedway, which a lot of people have to walk on, it connects all our vulnerable communities. The province keeps turning us down on all these things. And the Harbor Bridge is right in the middle of the city. And I don't think they understand the effect that huge piece of architecture not being taken care of affects us, and we have no say in it. So is there any way that we could send a formal letter? Because I have talked to the minister, the deputy minister, and they just keep telling me, well, there's one engineer that doesn't want to do all this. Well, we shouldn't be beholding to one engineer who doesn't live in St. John, doesn't pay taxes here, doesn't vote for anybody. This is our city. So I'm just wondering if we could send a letter, and you know what the list is, I mean, they took all our lights down on Reversing Falls, and we had flowers there, and they took all our flowers out of the North End ramp with absolutely no respect for St. John at all. So I hope that we can do something to go to the province and say, look, you've taken over these things, now you got to start taking care of them. And the third thing, I'd like to congratulate you on the North End plan. Earlier, we heard that there's 9 major housing projects going to the North End. That's just nothing but good news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris, over to you.
Yeah, one question, Your Worship, thank you, about this work plan and where you're at. My biggest concern continues to be growth community services. It tends to be where we fall down on commitments and timelines, and I'm not convinced yet by the budget that we have what we need to get the jobs, and many jobs we need done. We talk about one of them specifically. And so my question is, how do we rectify this? What are we doing differently to ensure we get resources out the door? We're going to have a conversation about reserves. We're going to have a conversation about a budget later tonight. So look at this work plan. We started the year with a conversation about a municipal housing entity, and we switched gears to displace that work around June, April, May, where we made the final call, okay, let's push this one. But now I'm understanding there was an RFP design was never issued to do work. So like there was money budgeted. That's just one out of a number. And I know that the budget is calling for bylaw officers. It gives some extra human resources to certain things. But how are we, like, what are you most looking forward to in 2024 to change to the work plan so that we get resources out the door faster and more articulately, because we're still sitting on reserves that could have been spent on initiatives. And I see delays all over the place, and I'm not saying that is because you guys weren't working your tails off, because you were. But I feel like I must be missing something if I'm not asking that question, I guess.
Yeah, and, part of it is the ability to attract resources as well. So, it is a market that has a lot of demand. So we have a planning position that we're going to be filling. We have within our Housing Accelerator Fund application, I think there's 7 or 8 positions that are identified as part of that if we secure the funding would be paid 100% by the federal government. And so we'd be able to hire people for a 3-year term funded by the federal government to increase our housing supply. So that's something we're mindful of and watching closely so that we can start to ramp up quickly should we be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Lots of great things in here, CEO McGovern. I have a couple of questions. When I went and took a look at the strat plan, it says that we're going to leverage Envision to promote the expansion of arts and culture attractions and also to promote arts and culture and branding and tourism. But I noticed that that was just a 2023 item. I'm assuming that that would be ongoing, wouldn't it?
Yes, I would agree. And I think, Andrew Beckett would also agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then as part of the social plan, part of it is establishing guiding principles. So I think that it's essential for council to have guiding principles. Would they be our guiding principles or guiding principles just based on a social plan?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Amy, you want to touch on that at all or?
Thank you for the question. I mean, we're barely at the early stages of developing this social plan, so we'll have more information for you in the coming months. But certainly, starting with guiding principles or vision is really a reasonable place to start, and then you build your policies out from there. But we are very early days at this stage.
Okay, no, that's great. So I feel like we're also hitting a lot of problems with not having Plan SJ redone, and as you just mentioned, we have a vacancy, a very big vacancy in the planning department. And obviously you're posting the job, but is this something that maybe we should possibly look at contracting out if we can't get that filled? Do you have any thoughts about that?
The update of Plan SJ? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's one that strategically we have just set back a little bit based upon the amount of time that it will consume. For the delivering of results, we really want to focus on energy on delivering units and approving units and getting housing built. So we've strategically pushed that off a little bit to also deal with the North End Neighborhood Plan as well, which is a priority to enable the revitalization of the North End. So there's some strategic projects like that that we want to move forward in advance of the municipal plan.
Well, and it makes sense that'll just go right in line with the municipal plan. I'm just worried about it getting delayed. I'll be honest about that, because I feel like questions keep coming up around this table with us, and I understand, we had lost our previous commissioner, so and then I still have questions, Mayor, but I know I'm getting close to the end of my time, but there's nobody else up.
You're the last one, so why don't you just wrap it up there, Councillor?
It's my round 2. Yeah, so I didn't see in your work plan the positions for the community development officer, but if the budget's approved, then there's money in there. Is that supposed to be in the first quarter, an RFP going out for that? Of 2024, sorry.
For the community development. Yeah, so those positions that are part of the budget would be posted for filling, essentially upon budget approval would be looking to move forward with them. So they will deliver on a number of community enhancement matters and the dangerous and dilapidated buildings and
And I know the bylaw officers was another one that a lot of counselors were worried about. Is that something we'll be doing right away in the first quarter as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to recruit and get people in those positions as soon as we can.
Just one last question, and I should have called you before because I had too many questions, but will the comprehensive parking study, I'm trying to think, like, is that supposed to have anything to do with whether or not we're going to have enough accessible parking spaces in the Central Peninsula? Is that part of that plan?
I see Commissioner Hugenholtz nodding his head, so maybe he wants to speak
Thank
to.
you, through you, your worship, to the councillor. Yes, that is part of the scope of
Okay.
what's going to be studied.
Great, wonderful, thank you. And I think there's some great items, and I, like the mayor, would have a hard time to choose. Performance management, of course, is a huge one for me, and transit. It's amazing how much progress has been there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Nobody talked about it earlier in the fives, but we had put in a recommendation that Common Council adopt the attached resolution appointing Tim O'Reilly, Tom McGrath, John, I can't think of John's, Chris Finney, and Barb Crawford as bylaw enforcement officers for the snow removal bylaw. So, that will help with a bit of the bylaws as well. But that's it for questions for you. I have a quick one for Ms. Poffenroth, though. Commissioner, when we say a comprehensive review of Plan SJ, what's the time frame? Like, what's the work just on, just if you have an idea? I know that you're not our.
Yeah, Your Worship, that's a great question. I don't know if I have a firm answer on that, but it is a significant piece of work. And my best guess, it's a one-year project, but I can certainly get back to you with some details on that. But
I'm
it
just
is-
curious. I figured it was probably around a year project because it's a significant document.
Absolutely.
But, just wanted to know what the work would be involved in that. All right, well, thank you, and I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 12.3. It's a staff update on truth and reconciliation.
Okay, that is going over to our General Counsel this evening.
Normally, technology doesn't like me very much. Good evening, Your Worship. Thank you, and good evening to members of council as well. I am honored to be before you this evening to report on the efforts of the city in truth and reconciliation. But before I head into that presentation, I wanted to do two things. When we talk about a subject matter like truth and reconciliation and you have a white Caucasian female presenting on it, it's important to recognize my white privilege. So I wanted to take a moment to do that. The other piece I wanted to do is to recognize the group responsible for the work that has been done to date since 2021. And that group is, we call it internally at the city, the Truth and Reconciliation Group that was put together across the organization. So we have members of your SLT as part of this group, as well as staff from across the organization. And if you would let me, Your Worship, I'd like to, at the risk of being kicked by some of them, I'd like to recognize and list their names. So as part of your SLT, the people who have been working to achieve what we've achieved thus far and dream what we're dreaming forward, we have Commissioner Hossack, Director Jackie Boucher, Director Tim O'Reilly, Director Lisa Casey, Director Jody Forgy, and Director David Doublestein. And as part of your larger staff, we have Maria Powell, Kateri Hibbert, next to whom I put a little asterisk, Leah Robichaud, Kate Wilcott, Jennifer Waltschutz, Erin White, Kara Coase, who's behind us this evening, Patricia Anglin, who's also with us this evening, Catherine Shannon, Anna McLean, Kay Kanyandula, Harold Lee, and GCO's articling candidate, Greg Vardy. In March of 2021, you'll recall that this council expressed a desire, and the city manager of the day committed to including an appropriate recognition of Indigenous people at council meetings, at St. John's council meetings. This led to the very first land acknowledgement being read at a council meeting on June 14th of 2021 by the Honourable Graydon Nicholas. And it also led to council resolving what's on the screen. One part of which I highlight at the time was council directed staff to prepare a proposal for concrete ways in which the city could foster reconciliation. That direction led to council adopting in November of 2021 what we have called a Truth and Reconciliation conceptual framework, the foundation of which is essentially, first, if you're going to do reconciliation, there must be truth. And so the foundation of that conceptual framework is based on first truth and then reconciliation. And so this evening is intended to be a bit of a progress report, what we've done so far. So I'm excited to share what we've achieved since June of 2021, when the first land acknowledgement was read, and then also share with you an overview of what we're dreaming or the initiatives that are being planned and beyond. Since we started down the path of truth and reconciliation at the city, the efforts have focused primarily on the truth aspect of truth and reconciliation. And this is in line with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's Call to Action 57, which is on the screen, which calls for education on history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Treaty and Aboriginal Rights, Indigenous Law, and Aboriginal Crown Relations. So that call to action calls for that kind of education for public servants at all levels of government. In support of that call to action and in line with your conceptual framework, a number of initiatives have been undertaken since 2021, which have focused primarily on truth. And so they're listed on the next few slides in no particular order. So I'll go through them. The first one was a blanket exercise, which was attended by all members of council as well as the senior leadership team in April of 2022, which was put on through Kairos. As well, in 2022, in November, a significant number of management staff underwent a training titled Indigenous Reconciliation and Awareness module put on by JEDI, which is the Joint Economic Development Initiative. There was a rollout of another training titled The Path, which is a self-guided course in Indigenous history on these lands that we call Canada, to senior leadership staff and council members in 2022, I apologize. Another important piece is this city has honored the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation since its inception in 2021. In 2022, the city honored that day through the unveiling of a mural at the market, with which you're all familiar. That was designed and prepared and painted by Indigenous artist Cassandra Edwards. And I have to say, members of council, I did not notify the artist that I would be mentioning her name this evening at a public meeting, so I apologize, Ms. Edwards, for not having given you heads up of this. In 2022, the city also honored that important national holiday by issuing Truth and Reconciliation moments by email to staff as well as members of council that encourage reflection on Canada's darker past, if I can call it that. On a lighter note, our mayor and deputy mayor attended a workshop in 2002 as well at the Imperial Theatre for drum making. Elder Chris Brooks was there, who also made the drums with our mayor and deputy mayor, and the whole event was put on with the help of Angela Beek. Since 2021, we've also created a library of Indigenous books and resources that is available in the mayor's office, and that reminds me that we have purchased for each member of council a book titled 21 Things You Need to Know About the Indian Act, and so we will be circulating that to you, as well as a copy of a booklet of the 94 calls to action. So you each get a gift from the City's Truth and Reconciliation Group this evening. Another thing we've done is we've continued to curate the Market Shadow Box as a place of remembrance. So on each important day, whether it be Red Dress Day or Indigenous Peoples Day or the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And then, and in that vein, in May of this year, the city honored Red Dress Day with a ceremony in this chamber that was open to the public. On the slide, you see Natasha Ward, who's also not aware that her face is on a slide in an open session. But thank you, Natasha, for doing this for the city. There was, the ceremony included a land acknowledgement, of course, a smudging, some drumming, and all of this in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people. We also honored in 2023 Indigenous Peoples Day. We did that with it was a profound experience at daybreak, so at sunrise. So you had a lot of people running at around 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the beach where Elder Chris Brooks lit a sacred fire, and he tended to it all day. That was followed later on in the day with a walk for senior leadership and members of council organized through First Nation storytellers. We also, again, in 2023, honored the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, this time with a healing walk at Rockwood Park, which some of you attended, which was open to the public, and more truth and reconciliation moments sent to staff and members of council to continue with the reflection on the darker past. And so other initiatives were unfolded since 2021 that didn't focus strictly on truth, but do make space for reconciliation. The first piece I want to mention is that working group that I've recognized at the beginning of this presentation was formed across the different departments of the city and includes a good number of your senior leadership team. Another thing that was done, and thanks to Director Tim O'Reilly, 2 orange sidewalks were painted in the uptown area. You're familiar with them. One of them is across the Imperial Theatre, and the other one is at the foot of Chipman Hill. And another thing, and it says place naming there, I apologize, that's a typo, it should say place naming. Another thing that the city did, and it's big, and you've heard it already this evening and a previous item on your agenda, place naming is very meaningful in reconciliation. And so council this year approved the name Idoli Magohamok as the name of the new waterfront public space. Another thing that was done in 2023 is the signage on the Trans-Canada Trail now includes Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq language, along with, at the recommendation of the elders who shared their language, a red double curve motif. I do want to take this opportunity at an open session of council to thank elders Donna Augustine and Imelda Purley for sharing the language with us, which now will appear on more and more signs in the city. Another thing we did and is we continue to diversify the workforce at the city. So that's exciting. I know that since 2021, we've welcomed more. I say more because we haven't tracked the employees who are Indigenous. So we assume that we have some, but we know for a fact that since 2021, we've welcomed more Indigenous people to the city's employees. So that's and their impact on the city's cultural fluency and the advancement of truth and reconciliation has been tremendous. What you see on the slide now is a painting that was commissioned at the end of 2022 by the same artist whose face is on the slide again, Cassandra Edwards. So we commissioned, after discussing with Kate Wilcott, a piece from that Indigenous artist. And what we asked the artist to depict was the manner in which, in her culture, important decisions are made, the manner in which consensus is reached. And we wanted to display that in the clerk's office. And so we asked Ms. Edwards to prepare a piece, and that the result is what you see on the screen. And I want to take a moment because we've asked we've asked the artist to describe the piece, and we have framed that and put that next to the piece. So I invite all of you to come in and have a look. But she describes the piece as follows. So she says, the City of St. John has commissioned a local Inuvialuit settler artist to create a thoughtful art piece. The artwork represents the intricate connection between the past, present, and future generations. It is a reminder to consider future generations when implementing societal changes through law and treaty, and to acknowledge the need to reflect on the past when moving forward. It is quite the piece. I will take a moment to talk about it a bit further in a second, but I also wanted to mention the last thing that's on the slide, which was currently there's an open call for artists in coordination with Maui Art to commission public artworks for City Hall generally. So this is the piece that Ms. Edwards prepared, and you will see the number 7 repeated. Well, you don't see the number 7, but you see 7 items in different iterations in the painting. So the orange and red circles represent embryos that represent the 7 generations in the future. And so what was described to me by the artist is that and I also note that the women are making decisions for the future in this painting. Forgive me, but I had to point this out. And so the 7 generations, so they make decisions, what I've been explained is they make decisions based on the impact of that decision over 7 generations down the road. Now imagine that for a moment. Every decision they make, large decisions, they make bearing in mind the impact of that decision over 7 generations down the road. So I just wanted to allow you to reflect on that for a moment and show that beautiful, colorful piece that now is depicted or is hanging in the clerk's office. Looking to the future. For 2024, some of the initiatives that are currently being planned are listed here. They're in no particular order either, so we will, of course, continue to recognize Red Dress Day in May, Indigenous Peoples Day in June, and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The orange sidewalks will continue to be maintained. We do plan on rolling out more training, the PATH training to a larger contingent of city employee. We are also looking to explore Indigenous Relations Academy courses, which are geared specifically to municipal employees. So we're looking into that. And in coordination with UNBSJ Indigenous Student Advisor, we are developing interpretive panels at locations of significant Indigenous history in the city. And then you've heard at Fundy Key, we are planning to have at the public space located there interpretive panels that depict history pre-colonization, so Indigenous history, which dates much further back than colonization. But perhaps the most exciting initiatives for 2024, is that staff is currently having discussions to plan a powwow on these lands known as Menaquest. So these initial discussions are underway. The hope is for this powwow to be hosted by the Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq nations, and a powwow at a high level it's an event that celebrates rich Indigenous culture and traditions. And at a powwow, you will see, I had the privilege of attending one this past year. And so you will see at powwows different performances, mainly dances, but it's quite astonishing to see the quality of the performance at those events. And so they also include markets, workshops, celebrations, and other things. They have been known to attract upwards of 25,000 people to an area where they're being held. And there's no question that they have a significant cultural as well as economic impact on the community where it's being held. The hope is for the powwow in Menaquest to become permanent, i.e. to become a yearly event. That becomes part of what is known as the powwow trail, because there's dates of different powwows being held at different areas. And so if we can do this well, we can potentially make it in the powwow trail and be there permanently. And that's what the hope is for staff. So As we continue down the city's path of truth and reconciliation, it is important to celebrate what's been accomplished thus far, but it's also equally important to recognize that there's much more work left to be done. As the Senator St. Clair mentioned, truth is hard, but reconciliation is harder and it takes longer. And so to ensure the city achieves meaningful reconciliation, the goal should be for the city to continue down, as it continues down this path, to ingrain truth and reconciliation in the collective corporate thinking under the larger umbrella of diversity, inclusion, and equity, such that it becomes an integral part of the day-to-day operations and the corporate interaction with its community and the land. We've looked at what other cities are doing across the country. The one you see other cities have reconciliation action plan. What you see on the slide is actually Toronto's, or the first page of Toronto's 68-page action plan. And what that has provided for us is, a glimpse in the art of the possible. It also reminds us how much more work we have left to do. We recognize that the resources in St. John are very different than the ones in Toronto, so we are aware of that, and but it's still, it's encouraging for us to see what more could be done. And so over the next year, the plan is for staff to look into how best this small city with a big heart should move forward down the path of reconciliation. So, and come back with a recommendation. Given what we now see other cities are doing, we want to come back to you with a recommendation, because we have to recognize that at the moment you don't have any dedicated resource to these initiatives. It is a contingent of staff who are doing this aside from everything else they're already doing. And so, reconciliation, if it's going to be achieved, it is necessary that it be given dedicated resources. There is a recommendation in your report, and I apologize to you and the CAO for not having put it on the slide, but the recommendation in the report is that Council endorse the ongoing efforts toward truth and reconciliation identified in this report. And before I complete my presentation, I want to say, Waliwan, Walolioch, thank you, merci. Subject to questions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation. And I would encourage anyone from the public to try to get onto our kit, because that's a great set of slides there that you've got. Certainly comprehensive. So I do have a question from Councillor Radwan. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor, through to General Counsel. First of all, I just want to say thank you to you and the whole team. I mean, it looks like you're doing a great job trying to work with the Indigenous community to get some action towards truth and then reconciliation. It's wonderful. I just wanted to stress, and it's no reflection on your team at all, that I think it's very important for us to continue to show as much appreciation for Indigenous community as we can. And in doing that, I feel very disturbed almost 3 years later, still having the conversation that there's derogatory language on a map for our city. We need our Indigenous community to feel appreciated. And so I have a big ask to the province to please put some urgency on this. I want us to be able to make everybody feel comfortable in St. John and appreciated too, because we are a small city with a big heart. But thank you to you, General Counsel. I know that your team have been trying to address this, but I urge the province to try to get this rectified as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I don't see any more questions for you, but I will take a motion to move the recommendation. Councillor Sullivan's moving the recommendation. Councillor Ogden seconding it on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 13.1 from the Finance Committee on the 2023 reserves.
Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's quite a detailed recommendation in the report, so I'll start by just moving the recommendation, make a couple of comments if I get a seconder.
Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. It is part of our requirements that every year Common Council approves moves in and out of our reserves. So that's the report you see in front of you. Most of what is included in the reserve movement was based in the 2023 budget or resolutions of committees as the year has gone on. There is one extra piece that came out of our year-end projections on page 4 in the report, and that is a recommendation from your Finance Committee with regards to the allocation of some one-time monies that were the result of increased building permit revenue and increased revenue from interest over the 2023 budget. And those items were based on either previous discussions around this budget process or a few items that came from staff, particularly replacement of guide rails and the replacement of a transit bus due to an unexpected write-off. So that's what we have before us tonight. And certainly there's staff here prepared to answer any questions.
Okay, great. I don't see any questions. We do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Harris, over to you for the first question.
Yeah, just with regards to these reserves, I asked this question a little bit before. What's the conversation happening? I mean, forgive me, I don't always catch the briefings from Finance Committee. What are the conversations at Finance Committee with regards to these reserves? You know, we often refer to them as a rainy day fund. For a lot of people, it's pouring, and we don't necessarily give a lot of clear vision on how things are going to really improve. And we don't always go in with a plan on how to best utilize the opportunity those reserves give us. And I know some of them are in case winter's really bad and we need extra stuff. It's like, I get it. We're not going to necessarily spend that to nothing. But if you don't mind, Chair, just giving me a rundown of some of those conversations and how they dovetail with some of those more action-oriented, I shouldn't say action-oriented, more front-facing groups like Growth Community Services, which really are engaging in public initiatives and trying to engage with the public to do different things. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Sorry, sure, happy to shed some light on the conversations. One important piece, the operating reserve has a statutory maximum. So it is at its maximum. That would be the reserve you think of for Snowmageddon. You know, something has happened in our normal operations throughout the year, and we need that cushion. And it's only about $6.5 million. So that's our operating reserve. The rest of the reserve is various allocations of really one-time monies. That's why we talk about the money from interest. We can't guarantee every year. It was one-time money, so we are looking at putting into one-time things. And the one-time things, when we look at those, the conversation is usually around plans that we have in place. So strategic plans, what is currently being operationalized, what could we move forward? We have an opportunity. The roundabout is an example here. It's in Move SJ, been elevated in conversation. It could be approved in the, some monies for it could be approved in the budget subsequently. So if we go down that road, that is something that we'll operationalize and move towards. This still wouldn't cover it all. Guide rails replacement is something apparently I just learned we used to do regularly and we haven't. So it's kind of a need that has arisen that staff brought forward. Same thing with the transit bus. City Market Strategic Plan, the Enterprise Resource Planning Project. Those are both things that the city has been moving on. We've got plans and projects for it, so we put money into it. We also talk about, you know, what about other things that we've talked about, we've got plans for, and there may be some money that hasn't been finished yet. We have talked about housing all the time. And Councillor Hickey's on the Finance Committee. He brings it up all the time. You know, how do we fund this project? What if this money doesn't come through? How can we support it? And the answer that I've given is council can make a decision on these things at any point in time. There is still some money for some of the housing initiatives that have been brought forward that's been approved. They're in reserves. They haven't been used yet. What I would suggest is once that box is empty and we've got projects going on, it's a conversation, do we need to top it up and continue? It's not a matter of not financing things that we have, but putting money into something, if it doesn't have a plan, doesn't look like it's going to be used in the near future, keep it in the reserves because we're not sure what the plan is going to be. But as plans come forward, we certainly want to finance those things. You'll see a small opportunity. There's a letter on later from ProKids that due to a variety of circumstances, ProKids is looking for some extra support. And part of the recommendation in the budget is to give them a little bit of money to help with some resource support to bring forward. But what if ProKids comes up short and they've got a lot of asks and can't meet it? What I've said is that's an example where you go to the reserves and you say, do we have some function there? Do you do it now? Well, no, because they're still going. But in case of emergency, they're certainly there. The opportunities that are there with the reserves, maintaining the reserves, we had talked about at the last meeting with when we did our debentures, and $170,000 a year over 10 years is being saved because we have reserves we can borrow against instead of borrowing from the province and paying them interest. So certainly they're a backstop for emergencies. They're available to help us plan in advance. I mean, the city always had fleet reserves and reserves to replace computers. It's interesting that it took us a while to say, well, we have other things that we need to plan for in advance as well. And if we have an opportunity, we get some money, we can put it away so that can not pay interest later on. So I don't know if that helps, but that kind of is where the conversation is. And ultimately, I would say, if there's a plan that comes from council that's approved, we will find a way to finance it and resource it and move it forward. If council approves a plan, our job in finance is to find a way to responsibly move it forward.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions. We have a motion on the floor. We have a mover and a seconder, so I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is another submission from the Finance Committee, the 2024 General Fund Operating Budget.
Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similarly to the last one, the recommendation has 10 parts to it. So I'll move the recommendation that's in the kit, and with the seconder, I'll speak very briefly to it.
Seconder, I got the deputy. So
Okay,
go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy. Ultimately, this is the same budget that was presented to us 2 weeks ago. I didn't receive, and speaking to the CFO, any significant changes, requests, save one change I mentioned earlier. There is additional funding for ProKids in the amount of $44,298 in this budget to help support them with extra resource. The reason for such an odd number, an exact number, is that is the most money that we could give them under this budget and stay within our wage escalation policy for budget 2024. So we have maxed out as much as we can in order to support ProKids, in order to support them with resources, and now that's in the operating budget. As I mentioned earlier, should there be an emergency, we have those funds set aside. But other than that, the budget is what we've seen and talked about for the last few months. Thanks.
Okay.
Pass here to answer questions.
Great. I don't see any questions. We've got the motion on the floor by the Councillor Sullivan, seconded by the deputy. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 13.3, another submission from Finance Committee on municipal tax reform.
Councillor Sullivan, back over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. Really, before well, the motion on the floor is, it's recommended, forwarded from the Finance Committee, that the Finance Committee recommends the Common Council send a letter to the provincial government and municipal associations regarding municipal tax reform.
Seconder on that? Councillor Hickey?
And thank you. And really, in short, the letter's pretty straightforward, with a graph in the middle that I think says it all. That in our budget, our revenue from property tax is coming entirely from the residential taxpayers in St. John, and commercial and the heavy industry are basically flat from one year to the next. And at the end of the day, it's because while some tools were given to us by the province, they haven't finished their municipal tax reform. And we continue and have continued to have conversations with our partners in the province. But I think we have some education and conversation to be had with the municipal associations. You know, I knew intuitively that the city of St. John was the industrial center of the province. And thanks to some digging and statistics from our fantastic finance people and CFO Fudge, for those who haven't been paying really close attention, the greater St. John region, if you take St. John and Musquash together, for 60% of the province, CFO, 60% of the province's in heavy industry is in St. John and Musquash. So we've got some education to do with some of our partners in municipal associations who, because they don't feel that pressure, because they don't have that heavy industry, so we need to have those conversations as well. So that's what this letter's about.
Perfect. Councillor Hickey, you had a question?
Not a question, Your Worship, more of an amplification of Chair Sullivan's point, just to say we're passing a budget that puts a 10% increase on residential taxes. Heavy industry is getting a discount. That's a story none of us can tell enough. It's got to be our priority coming in here every day, and it should be every MLA's priority when they head over the Petersville Hill. It's got to be the top thing we talk about here. So
Agreed.
Kudos to Chair Sullivan for continuing to lead that conversation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden?
Yes, I would like to second that, and I want people to know that this has gone on for 60 years in St. John. One new school in 60 years, the province built hundreds of them. If you're wondering what are the consequences of us losing our industrial tax over 60 years, look at our university numbers, look at our number of schools, look at our poverty rates. There's been a big downside to us losing our industrial tax, and it's gone on for 60 years. And so we need the citizens to help us get through to the province and the MLAs that we need that money that's generated in St. John. We're not asking for them to go raise money elsewhere. We're just saying, let us keep the money that is generated in St. John and make our lives better so we can grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, I mean, the center of this is what's wrong with the city with industrial taxes. And we can go back to 13 or 14 when the pulp mills all get 50% reduction in taxes. But it's here. Why can't we do a flyer, a householder to send to every resident in the city of St. John, just as here an explanation to what Councillor Sullivan just said? I mean, we're saying it to ourselves. Barry said it's been going on for 60 years. The public doesn't understand this. They come and pay their taxes, and like we said, we get an increase. Heavy industry got a minus, less. Yet the trucks and the trains and the industry that we have to involve ourselves, the fires and explosions that take place in this city. I think it's time that we tell the public, or we show the public in writing exactly what's going on here in the city. We can keep complaining. I did it when I was an MLA. I had 30 people come and only 2 people were in favor, both of them from St. John. The other 28 were totally against us. Totally against us. So, I mean, I think it's time that we do something publicly other than, I mean, I'm not saying people don't read the paper, and I mean, the paper's getting less and less anyways, right? Probably January there'll be no paper. But I mean, I think it's time we send a householder, we do something direct to the public and tell the public exactly why we're complaining, why for 70 years this went on in here. And if we don't do nothing, we don't change the politics, it'll go on for another 70 years. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris?
And just to pick up on that point, Your Worship, to Councillor Lowe's point, I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging, we just had Green Party leader David Kuhn down to make a commitment to put a motion on to remove that multiplier. So people are paying attention. It's good to acknowledge allies when we have them, so I'll acknowledge that one. But you tell this story anytime you go to FCM and people from across this country look at you like you've got 10 heads. It's the time for a mail out is definitely here, because you get enough St. Johners talking about this story and putting two and two together. We'll make it, we'll change it. There's just not enough doing it yet. So I would be in full support of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
I can wrap it up.
Okay.
You give me another 2 seconds. I certainly acknowledge everything the councillors have said. You know, to be fair, the provincial government, in the first part of their municipal tax reform, did separate some classes, did open up the sliders a little bit. Last year was really the first opportunity to put it in operation. And the provincial government did reduce, reduce their own provincial taxes on heavy industry to create some room for municipalities to move in and get more tax from industry. And in the current budget, 2023, the City of St. John did get more money from heavy industry with that move. However, the province reduced the amount of heavy industrial tax by more than the City of St. John could move into by moving the 1.7 slider, which meant that even though heavy industry in 2023 paid more to the City of St. John, overall in 2023, heavy industry in St. John still paid less in property tax. And this year, because of council's choice, as weird as it is, to cap the residential increase at only 9.91%, that means heavy industry in St. John pays less again. In a time when inflation is at one of its highest points that many of us have seen in our lifetime, heavy industry in St. John has paid less 2 years in a row. The new pieces that we've been given are good. They need to be tweaked. We had an opportunity. The province was going to have a conversation with municipalities in September. It's been postponed. Thus the letter to our municipal association partners and to the government, because we need that conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Councillor. So I will call the question. The motion's on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Did you say opposed, Councillor Hickey? No? Okay, sorry. You were, I wasn't sure if you were bidding on something there, just joking. Okay, good. Okay, so motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 13.4, Public Safety Committee Housing for All Vision Statement.
Over to you, Councillor Hickey.
What I was doing, Your Worship, was making sure I had my notes ready so I could be as quick as
I love
possible
that.
for you.
Prepared.
Your Worship, members of council, before you is a motion to adopt the Housing for All Vision Statement. Throughout the year, our team has worked with the province of New Brunswick as well as community agencies to support vacated encampment cleanups that pose a risk to the community. As well, we did see success in these initiatives. However, we were presented with some other considerations. And because of the sensitivity of this, we felt it was important to develop a policy positioning how the City of St. John will support the homeless population's encampment residents and came up with the idea of coming up with an envision statement, and was really established based on best practices within other communities that have established this, and really creates a steering statement for those collaborating to develop a policy in keeping all of our partners focused. Staff members from various departments had the opportunity to provide feedback in finalizing the vision statement that is unanimously endorsed by the Public Safety Committee. And I'll bring it for you. I'll read it for you now. Every resident within the City of St. John is entitled to a safe, supported, and sustainable home. In the spirit of the right to adequate housing articulated in the 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the City of St. John wishes for its residents to live in security, peace, and dignity, regardless of the home's permanence. The City of St. John's goal is to provide safe community spaces for access by all its residents, while supporting individuals as they access housing that meets their specific needs. Just for consistency, moving forward, this vision statement will be referred to as the Housing for All vision statement. Next steps are to identify and build out critical components in supporting the homeless population that are living in encampments. The policy will be then brought through the Public Safety Committee to endorse and recommend to Council. And the aim is to have that completed by the first quarter of 2024. Am I turning over to you, Kara, for the presentation, or are we just moving forward? Okay.
Okay, and so
the
Councillor.
recommendations in the kit, I'll move it if I have a
You'll
second.
move it? Okay, I'll take a seconder on that. Councillor Sullivan. On the question, Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. So, I mean, I appreciate all the work that staff have done. I just wanted to make mention that I think that, you know, to try to help our unhoused people here, we need to have real sense of urgency on this item. I know that they're not all registered with the Human Development Council, but Fresh Start has a list of 271 people unhoused on their list. We need to get more action of people into housing. So if there's any units that can be opened up by DTI right away or housing supports given, I'm told that there's a few landlords that have units if people can actually get approved for the housing list. So it needs to happen sooner than later. It's getting very cold. And I appreciate all the work that the province has done with the Out of the Cold shelter. And I know staff have been working in step with them as well. You know, but if there's something more that can be done, it needs to be done sooner than later. Housing projects are still going forward. There's some projects in the pipeline, but it's just not soon enough. So if there's a way to get things moving faster, I hope our partners at the province will move on it. Thank you.
Councillor Hickey.
I don't know if Kara wanted to
Oh,
respond.
I saw your lights
or-
on. No,
okay.
we're good.
I just offer a brief response and concluding remarks to the councillor's point. It's clear there's not enough urgency here. It's not our job. We're in the back seat on this, taking lead from the provincial government. Our aim here is to do what we can to set the table as best as possible in this community for good housing outcomes and to advocate like hell to get as much as we can for housing across the line led by the provincial government. The shelters and stuff are a good step, but it's still clear that there's a group of 12 plus tents on Waterloo Street in the middle of a monsoon, and that is unacceptable in this community. It continues to be unacceptable in this community. It's clear there's no urgency from the provincial government on this. We're going to keep advocating for it. We're going to keep pushing for it. This statement says what the expectation should be in St. John, and everything should live up to that. There deserves to be dignity in our neighborhoods and in our community and in our housing. Right now, with tents on our streets, our neighborhoods don't have dignity, and the people who live in them don't have any dignity. We owe that to them, and we're going to continue to advocate to the province to make it happen.
Okay, great. I've got the motion on the floor. It's been seconded, so I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 15.1, a letter from Fundy Region Service Commission with respect to intent to borrow.
Okay, the motion, the recommendation in the kit is to receive for information. So I'll take a motion on that. Councillor Stewart and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.2, a letter from F. Wells on ProKids.
Okay, this one says recommendation received for information that, as Councillor Sullivan just explained, it's been adjusted in your budget, so we're good. So I guess we'll receive it for information. So the deputy and Councillor Radwan on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
The final item is an addition from the deputy mayor with respect to a letter to Minister Austin.
Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. So on the 8th of December, Minister Austin sent a letter to Ames, basically giving them until the 22nd of December to respond to the report that was brought out. And I'd like to make a motion that the mayor be directed to write a letter in response to the Minister Austin's letter dated December 8th regarding the AIM task force findings and next steps in the process. If I can get a seconder.
Okay, take a seconder. Councillor Lowe. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that looks like that's it for this evening. I'll take a motion to adjourn from Councillor Lowe and one from Councillor Stewart. Thank you. I don't know if we'll be back next week or if we won't be back next week. But in case we are not, I will say to everyone who's celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas. We also had Hanukkah that was celebrated or will be celebrated. We had Diwali, Kwanzaa. So with over 40 ethnocultural groups listed in the city or registered in the city, there's all kinds of celebrations going on over these few weeks and months, this month. And if you're not celebrating anything, I would say enjoy the holidays because this is the one time of the year, and I do like it, and I like that we do wait until after November the 11th to get started, but the spirit of the season seems to infect people, and it's one of the nicest times of the year. It really is one of the nicest times of the year. And you'll see that with the Harbor Lights tree growing. People seem to be generous. It's a difficult time for some people as well, and I note that, but it's also a time of generosity, and I guess when we think about people who don't have as much as maybe we have, so it's just a really nice time of the year, so I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you and good night.